100 years prior, portals tore through reality itself, unleashing subterranean labyrinths upon the world. Creatures that poured forth from these rifts proved immune to traditional armaments, leaving humanity defenseless against their assault. Simultaneously with the portal manifestations, certain individuals discovered extraordinary powers awakening within their physical forms. Through their intervention, civilization regained its footing as mystical forces, and transformed societies established themselves across the globe. A portion of these empowered beings embraced the role of monster slayers, dedicating their lives to eliminating supernatural threats. Yet, after multiple decades, weren't there an excessive number of these warriors? When the underlying mechanism was uncovered, artificial awakening procedures became feasible. Anyone possessing sufficient financial resources could undergo the transformation process. Every unremarkable, previously timid individual could transform into an impressive awakened being who would command attention. Consequently, the population seeking to join the ranks of these warriors expanded dramatically, ushering in the golden age of monster hunters. Predictable complications soon emerged. As a result, authorities established mandatory certification examinations. Only successful candidates received authorization to practice as active warriors. Educational establishments soon appeared, offering specialized preparation for these challenging assessments. These institutions delivered comprehensive curricula and practical training for aspiring candidates. Eventually, private organizations emerged. They focused on developing skilled professionals within their specialized domains. Such establishments became known as hunter academies. Pursuing a warrior's path now requires enrollment in these educational institutions. Fists that challenge divine authority. When mastered, they possess the power to reshape destiny. Instructor Atlas. Understanding Manu's teachings reveals the entire cosmos. Instructor Merlin. When mental clarity falters, physical prowess becomes merely worthless debris. Instructor Gautama Buddha. The institution our protagonist will attend operates on an entirely different plane than conventional schools. The decision remains which course of study he should pursue. However, let us begin with his origins. Allan Jefferson, 27 years old, possessed natural awakening abilities. He received greater power than most individuals at birth. Nevertheless, to settle his deceased parents' financial obligations from their unexplained demise, he has spent 9 years transporting monster remains. Only one aspiration sustains him through such demanding labor and persistent psychological strain from Dolgo, his ambition to achieve professional hunter status. Co-workers inquired about Allan's progress toward becoming a certified warrior. Our protagonist continues searching for suitable educational opportunities, though expensive options remain limited. This path cannot be avoided. Academy training is essential. Precisely correct. The majority of instructors at these institutions maintain active hunting careers. They impart practical experience and demonstrate advanced techniques essential for survival in life-threatening situations. This disparity has created an enormous divide between self-taught individuals and academy graduates. The era has arrived when pursuing a hunter's career necessitates formal institutional education. Allan had finally accumulated savings totaling $40,000. This amount provided sufficient funding for 1 year of academy tuition. Our protagonist preferred attending a superior institution, but their costs exceeded his budget, while this option remained reasonable. Unexpectedly, Allan discovered an advertisement for the Transcendence Academy appearing on his display, an institution he'd never encountered. He selected the hyperlink. Fundamental paradigms have transformed. Transcendental fury prepares to impact the cosmos. Wisdom and expertise are meticulously curated by instructors possessing over 10 millennia of experience. Personalized curricula designed for every pupil. Countless favorable testimonials from learners of various ages. Text declaring the observer could join their ranks filled the entire display before the presentation concluded. Allan remains astounded. What maniac conceived this promotional material? Their website resembles any standard academy platform. However, the faculty names appear peculiar. Atlas, God, Merlin, among others. Investigation seems warranted. Allan activated footage of the Supreme Sage, whose actual identity is Sun Wukong. His primary armament consists of the Rui staff. Nevertheless, poles and lances share fundamental similarities with this weapon. Thus far, the instruction appears satisfactory considering its approach. The sage mentions theoretical concepts may prove challenging to comprehend. Initially, he will demonstrate the deflective technique of dispersal, followed by the staff's inward rotation for capturing movements. The final phase involves penetrating the opponent through precise targeting in a single motion, the puncture technique. Allan watches in amazement. The mountain has vanished completely. He experiences shock because such feats surpass even S-class hunter capabilities. Suddenly, enrollment opportunities for the Great Sage's instruction were presented to our protagonist. Allan selected the registration option. Academy membership was required. The enrollment fee, considering our hero's circumstances, would amount to $40,000. Our protagonist felt stunned. Payment was required merely for account creation. Upon viewing the sum, he literally cried out. Allan concluded they operated fraudulently and resumed his employment. His co-worker assumed academy enrollment based on his apparent happiness. Our protagonist responded cheerfully that he refers to the institution as the Ark, praising their faculty quality. The colleague requested not to be forgotten when Allan achieved wealth. They established an agreement where the co-worker would handle the monsters Allan captured, and everything appeared promising. However, someone once observed that existence appears comedic from a distance, yet tragic upon closer examination. The lifting chain snapped and the massive carcass crushed Allan beneath it. Genuine laughter requires accepting personal suffering. The physician explained our hero suffered nerve death in his lower extremities. Apparently, fractured bones became entangled with neural tissue during healing. This resulted from awakened individuals' accelerated regeneration, though management refused compensation because discovery of the workplace incident would damage the company's reputation. The surgical procedure would cost exactly $40,000 and required immediate attention. Additional delays would cause permanent neural attachment to bone structures, making medical intervention impossible. This demonstrates the importance of long-term planning. Allan had maintained this perspective throughout 9 years of hellish labor. His complete savings funded the operation. Only $3,000 from Mr. Bennett remained available. Allan questions his ability to endure this ordeal again. A notification suddenly appeared on his device. All transcendent beings possess humble and unremarkable histories. Therefore, special offers exist for new enrollees. This referenced the identical academy. Following that incident, Allan could not locate it again. He submitted an enrollment application. After evaluating his circumstances, the required amount became $3,000. Our protagonist felt surprised. Previously, it demanded $40,000. Considering the situation, $40,000 represented Allan's total assets at that time. Would they truly claim everything he possessed? Perhaps attempting registration was worthwhile. The account contained nothing regardless. Upon membership confirmation, currency from Allan's envelope mysteriously disappeared. Transcendence Academy admission succeeded, and a miniature figure emerged from the phone. This being welcomed our hero and verified his identity as Allan Jefferson. The small entity serves as his guide, handling foundational education. His designation is Mentor. Allan possesses numerous questions. His guide's name is literally Mentor. The diminutive being explains that Mentor serves as our hero's instructor. Alternatively, he might not simply be a mentor, but the teacher of Mentor Odysseus. Allan recognizes this name. Odysseus represented Mentor's inaugural student. Considerable time has elapsed since Odysseus achieved transcendence, yet he occasionally communicates with Mentor. Allan naturally experiences complete bewilderment. Regardless, Mentor explained their Transcendence Academy develops individuals seeking to surpass racial limitations. Allan expressed surprise that this institution focused on transcendence rather than hunting. However, Mentor confirmed these concepts cannot be compared. Transcendent beings operate on entirely different levels. Allan began discussing S-class hunters. Mentor stated their instructors could defeat such warriors using minimal effort. Subsequently, he requested our hero complete a transcendental aptitude assessment. This requires selecting preferred specializations. Through this process, the Academy determines Allan's desired transcendent path, while assessing his current abilities and natural inclinations. The instructions read, "This constitutes a survey. Accurate recommendations require honest responses." Allan selected combat specialization. Before hesitating, uncertainty plagued him regarding skill level selection for the second inquiry. Mentor acknowledged many individuals experience this doubt. Allan could choose options literally reflecting his capabilities. Mentor hoped the student could devastate landscapes with maximum strikes or minimally cleave mountains through single movements. Unfortunately, Mentor cannot comprehend how this incompetent individual gained academy admission. Nevertheless, concerns are unnecessary. The Transcendent Academy never expels enrolled students. Membership ensures permanent status. Mentor instructed continued question responses. Eventually, they completed the assessment and Mentor applauded. Allan felt exhausted. The survey contained 108 questions. He received complimentary access. Mentor will suggest several required presentations. The remaining details await analysis of our hero's profile. Allan's combat preference involves spear techniques. For spear mastery, Eastern key methods prove superior to mana cultivation approaches. The great celestial sage offered optimal foundational training, but considering Allan's inability to lift mountains, the difficulty would prove excessive. Mentor suggests beginning with instructor Siddhartha Gautama's presentations. Does this reference Buddha? Correct, though he denies it, all students address him accordingly. He ranks among the most renowned instructors for psychological education. His curriculum is mandatory for transcendence examinations. Typically, attending this presentation requires substantial payment, but Siddhartha Gautama prioritizes rescuing struggling souls. Instructor Gautama's presentation remains essential for this reason. It facilitates success across virtually any transcendence specialization. Therefore, even if Allan feels mentally overwhelmed, complete viewing is absolutely necessary. Understanding will emerge during commencement. Mentor promised contact following profile analysis before returning to the phone. Allan found himself alone. Apparently, lecture viewing was required. An instructor materialized on screen, asking students whether they believed their reality existed. Could this truly be Buddha? He resembles a living golden sculpture. More importantly, this presentation proves extremely challenging. The concept of self lacks existence. Therefore, Buddha lacks existence. Without comparative references, how can something exist that defies definition? Consequently, this reality and cosmos originated when we were born. Allan descended deeper into contemplation. Harmony with existence will perish only upon our death. We lack existence. We embody the world. Our hero senses approaching madness. The presentation hasn't reached even 1% completion. The physician marveled at Allan's remarkable recovery speed. Obviously, he possesses awakened status. Nevertheless, throughout 30 years of medical practice, this man witnessed nothing comparable. Allan had not imagined this improvement. Siddhartha Gautama's instruction brought inner tranquility to his spirit, accelerating healing processes. Though each listening session seemed to threaten his sanity, the lesson reached only 1.3% completion, yet results proved remarkable. Unpredictable events remain possible. The physician recommended additional hospitalization for 1 or 2 weeks. He wondered about post-lecture developments. The Transcendence Academy operates seriously. Allan now possessed bodily mobility. Why not explore Chiron's presentation, which was required for combat training? Class A transformation is awarded upon completion. Compared to Buddha's unshakable heart, this rank appears modest. Nevertheless, this hardly represents low-level capability. Most likely, Unshakable Heart simply possesses overwhelming power. Instructor Chiron offered greetings and self-introduction. Chiron embodies a centaur, possessing human torso with equine lower anatomy. Hercules, Theseus, Achilles, Jason, and numerous others. He instructed virtually every hero from Greek legends. This presentation's objective involves preparing students for progression toward initial transcendence stages. Chiron requests noting that combat methods receive superficial treatment in this curriculum, authentic Chiron instruction. Honestly, Allan barely experiences surprise anymore. The instructor prepares to identify the primary step toward transcendent status. Chiron commanded sharply for the young fool to immediately rise and depart. Allan leaped from his bed in terror, discarding the phone. Our hero tumbled from bed before receiving daily assignments. 30 kilometers running, 1,000 squats, 300 push-ups, 300 abdominal exercises, and 150 pull-ups. Would this occur daily? Allan isn't some superhuman character, and the physician advised avoiding excessive exertion for the following week. Allan chose to merely observe lectures temporarily, planning actual training after hospital discharge. However, incomplete assignments prevented advancement to subsequent lectures. Allan screamed, questioning how they monitored his inactivity. All hope seemed lost. Though 1 week wouldn't resolve anything, self-torture served no purpose. Allan decided to prioritize Buddha's lectures initially. Suddenly, he observed a notice indicating free access expiration in 83 days. Therefore, time limitations apply. Regardless of perspective, the Transcendence Academy remains an educational institution. Logically, not everything could be complementary. Allan departed tearfully to begin exercises, 83 days remaining. Apparently, 90 days were initially provided. Our hero lacks understanding of academy operations. However, progress advancement seemingly requires Allan to absorb knowledge and achieve specific comprehension levels. Listening to videos produced no progress. Allan repeatedly consumed Buddha's presentation throughout the entire week, yet progress remained static. Our hero doubts course completion within 83 days. Free access resembles a trial period. Allan hadn't exercised recently. Honestly, until this moment, he perceived no training value whatsoever. After all, he had transported hunter-killed monsters for 9 years. Meanwhile, Allan began push-up exercises. Monster weights averaged approximately 70 kilograms, eliminating additional exercise needs. Though our hero cannot utilize magic, he maintains awakened status and confidence in physical capabilities. Eventually, Allan completed 300 push-ups. Compared to years of physical labor, this represented nothing. He planned to maintain momentum and continue, but only 81 push-ups registered. Allan returned to ground position for proper push-up execution. This indicated imperfect push-ups and exercises generally weren't counted. Allan finished only at evening and collapsed from complete exhaustion. This madness was unbearable. Daily repetition seemed impossible. Several days later, our hero again emerged from the ward into the corridor for training purposes. The elderly patient gasped. The young man improves daily. Allan inquired about her condition. She observed his diligent efforts. Breaking news appeared on television. A level 4 giant was detected in Seoul at 5 o'clock this morning. The association claims it remained dormant, unknown to the monster transportation service, apparently. The giant awakened in the city center from its slumber. Many casualties could have resulted, but fortunately, an awakened individual was nearby who repelled the monster's assault. This turned out to be a Gene Academy student. The elderly woman remarked that hunters rescued them once again. Truly remarkable individuals. Incidentally, she recalled the young man also possessed awakened abilities. Allan responded timidly, confirming this. Therefore, he's a hunter who will also appear on television someday. Suddenly, a man sitting quietly nearby, having overheard the conversation, stated that television doesn't feature just anyone. He declared with an unpleasant expression that becoming a hunter now proves extremely difficult. The probability is 1 in a million. The elderly woman expressed surprise at these changes. During her era, circumstances differed. Subsequently, the man addressed Allan, calling him student. He doesn't even attend academy. He merely wastes time training. The man stated Allan would never achieve hunter status. Abandoning unrealistic aspirations and not squandering youth would prove wiser. The elderly woman scolded the man for his speech manner. Allan clenched his fists, declaring he would determine his own path. The man should focus on his own affairs without interference. The man became angry at the disrespectful youth and stood. Incidentally, heeding elder advice proves valuable. Impossible fantasies, complete nonsense. Allan attends the Transcendence Academy. Within 1 week, he experienced training effects. At the Transcendent Academy, he will achieve professional hunter status and will certainly succeed. In the city center, one girl expressed exhaustion with hunting careers. What purpose does this academy serve anyway? Everything requires payment. Students are virtually non-existent. She eliminated mountains of monsters before declaring potential death from boredom. Finally, Allan returned home. 2 complete weeks of hospitalization had passed. His apartment may be compact, but it's ideal. 1 year remains until hunter examinations. How much money remains available? Allan possesses absolutely nothing. Incidentally, he had completed daily requirements. Our hero lacked time for lecture viewing. Because the following day was commencing, though perhaps today would succeed, Allan would begin the next lesson. Chiron praised our hero, observing that he had apparently learned mobility. In that situation, taking initial steps was appropriate. The primary step toward transcendent status involves sensory perception. The following morning, Allan resumed employment. Management assumed he required complex surgery, but it proved minor. Our hero was criticized for lacking intelligence by returning here. If similar incidents recur, consequences will be severe, as if Allan desired returning. No alternatives exist. He lacks even food resources. However, management apparently feels somewhat guilty. During break time, Allan contemplated the situation. Everything ultimately concerns finances. Without employment, starvation results. With employment, study time disappears. Without completing daily assignments, Chiron's lectures become inaccessible. Perhaps reviewing previous classes proved worthwhile. Correct. The instructor mentioned sensory perception in the last presentation. 5 senses provide crucial combat roles: vision, hearing, touch, taste, and scent, all familiar sensory modalities. Regardless of sensation, we initially perceive stimuli, then recognize them, followed by conclusion formation. However, this process proves too slow. Why contemplate such pointless matters? Chiron will demonstrate maximum acceleration techniques. Students experience something entirely different from these 5 senses. The 6th sense concealed within them is intuition. At that moment, Allan's colleague and friend, Michael, approached and gently patted his back. If only our hero had announced his return. The individual asked confusedly how Allan had evaded contact. Did he possess rear vision? Management ordered them to work immediately. Michael asked our hero about his capacity. This weighed at least 200 kilograms and could cause overexertion. Allan declared it acceptable. He should proceed with lifting. Our hero supported 3 enormous monster segments on his back. What an energetic individual. He genuinely appears fine. Strangely, Allan felt power flowing through him. He began squatting exercises. Perhaps he would complete daily requirements. No time would exist after work regardless. Allan performed 1 squat and decided to verify proper execution. He was surprised that 1 squat registered as 3, indicating extra weight increases efficiency. This was absolutely fantastic. Michael shouted that his friend required rest and offered assistance, but Allan paid no attention. Why waste time on exercise when training could occur during work? The method of training was irrelevant, only results mattered. Greater weight meant fewer repetitions required. Combining work with productive time usage proved possible. 2 objectives achieved simultaneously. After work, Allan immediately collapsed on his bed. Death seemed imminent. Combining employment with studies proved highly effective but extremely challenging. Seriously, who would conceive training and hauling monsters concurrently? Nevertheless, it represented excellent time conservation. The time was only 10 o'clock, and our hero had already consumed both lectures. Chiron's course reached 9.1% completion, and Buddha's achieved 2.5%. Allan's rapid progress was positive, yet he felt time was being wasted. Perhaps rewatching would prove beneficial. No, perhaps enrolling in another course would prove superior. The concept wasn't poor. Apparently, rewatching doesn't influence progress. Selecting something different from free lectures by Professor Xiang Yu, students will become significantly stronger and capable of lifting mountains barehanded. Could this truly be the same hegemonic ruler? Hegemonic King Xiang Yu represents a legendary Western Chu sovereign, celebrated for superhuman strength. His reputation claims he equals 7 ordinary men. This sounds promising, and it's complimentary. Enrollment seems wise. Upon completion, Allan would earn the rank mountain-lifting spearman. Xiang Yu laughed, stating that since the student enrolled in this curriculum, he represents merely a failure lacking basic spear knowledge. Does such insignificance truly desire spear mastery? Nevertheless, Xiang Yu will provide instruction. All weaklings can access free training, eliminating need for that monkey, the great sage. Xiang Yu instructed simple spear swinging, feeling it through every bodily cell, comprehending it, then returning to the instructor. Allan received daily assignments requiring 5,000 spear swings. Xiang Yu spoke merely a few sentences, and this constituted Sheila's presentation with another peculiar task. Allan's supervisor told Lisa Fola, a Class B hunter, that no workplace accidents had occurred. Absolutely no concerns existed. She inquired whether they had heard about the giant that awakened recently. Naturally, Lisa had personally confirmed its death, but thorough verification seemed prudent in case something was overlooked. Workers expressed surprise, questioning her identity. Management practically groveled before her. Perhaps she's the Star Sword's granddaughter. Her name is Lisa Falk. She stopped abruptly. Christoph Falk, Star Sword. A century ago, he was among the awakened who received power during gate openings. At that time, virtually nothing was understood about awakened individuals. Monsters were more savage and could roam streets freely. No certainty existed that humanity could survive. During that period, Christoph was among the few awakened, one of those who prevented civilization's disappearance. A genuine world savior, a hero. Much time has passed since then. Christoph has aged considerably. Yet he remains a heavyweight in his domain, capable of competing with anyone. Allan responded to all discussions by expressing indifference and continuing work. Lisa asked about his activities. Management requested ignoring him. He had behaved this way for a week. He seemed to have lost sanity. Allan squatted with enormous weights and counted aloud. The girl considered him insane. Our hero told Michael he would leave the bodies there. The individual asked when Allan would calm down, but since he had begun the course, he needed to discover its conclusion and continued squatting. Our hero threw a large monster carcass to the ground. Allan stated these activities truly had purpose. He approached the next carcasses when suddenly he observed a massive giant looming over Michael. Finally, Lisa departed from there. She clearly disliked their supervisor. Mr. Bennett spoke as if the Star Sword's granddaughter had no place in such a remote location and preferred discussing everything in their impressive office. How much longer must she endure this? Workers whispered among themselves, questioning whether she truly is the Star Sword's granddaughter. Lisa can actually hear them. They find it strange that she possesses such low B-class status, despite being that Star Sword's granddaughter. To many he represents a hero, but to Lisa the name represents a burden, a label she cannot escape. From infancy, her grandfather instructed her in hunting techniques. However, the standard he establishes proves too elevated. Lisa simply cannot surpass it. She has endured lifelong comparisons to her heroic grandfather, but her genuine aspiration involves teaching people. Lisa told her grandfather about her teaching desires, but Kristoff refused to listen. He demanded the topic never be raised again. Because she is the Star Sword's granddaughter, she cannot live normally. But they reached a compromise, and Lisa established a hunter's academy. Young people were attracted by the prospect of instruction from that Star Sword. But when they discovered he had no involvement and that Lisa would be the instructor, the girl attempted to retain them but failed. When it became apparent that her grandfather didn't teach at her academy, everyone immediately lost interest and departed. They desired only the Star Sword, not her. Even the few who remained left the academy after threats from their grandfather. Now no one knows about it. If only Lisa had at least one worthy student. Suddenly she heard workers screaming that a monster was present and they needed to flee. A living manticore towered over Michael. Allan couldn't understand why she suddenly revived. She was definitely eliminated. Michael screamed for our hero to flee, to abandon him, save himself. Michael would certainly be killed. An ordinary person will never defeat a monster. Neither will an awakened person unable to use magic. And the manticore is a level 4 monster, which even a professional will struggle against. Allan began recalling whether any hunters were present. It seemed Lisa was nearby. But no, she's already gone and won't arrive in time. Michael will simply be torn apart. Immediate action was necessary. Someone had to act urgently, otherwise the individual couldn't be saved. But who? Allan seized the pipe sharply and struck at the monster. He defended against the monster and told his companion to escape quickly. Michael couldn't abandon Allan, but then both would be consumed. Therefore, the individual finally fled. Now our hero remained alone. He must endure until hunters arrive here. Allan told himself to avoid fear, maintain self-control, not waver, and most importantly, stand firm like a pillar. You are the universe. Observe the world. I understand its origins, its essence. This is what Buddha Shakyamuni stated. Embrace the entire universe. Consider its direction and set aside emotions. Then the wildly beating heart will calm itself. Allan approached the monster closer. He had to move, not think. Otherwise, it might be too late. Trusting instincts was necessary. The manticore swung its enormous claw, but Allan nimbly leaped away. Thinking is unnecessary. Relying on feelings is required. Our hero jumped up and located the monster's vulnerable area. He wondered if attack time had come and what action he should take. Shan Yu stated that lifting mountains requires more than strength alone. Courage and passion are necessary. You must trust them. Believe you can cleave a mountain in half and never doubt yourself. Allan can cleave it. No, he absolutely must. A force that could relocate a mountain, uproot it from earth. Finally, our hero struck. Lisa ran in panic, asking about the explosion. She witnessed an incredible scene before her. A simple monster loader severed a manticore in half with a single iron pipe. Allan stated uncertainly that it seemed to function. The progress of all 3 lectures increased substantially. Lisa ran up asking what had occurred there. Some loader who doesn't even attend academy, using a beam instead of proper weaponry, defeated such a monster. Allan immediately ran to Michael to check his condition and injuries. But the individual was concerned about our hero. He knows how much he's been training lately. Mr. Bennett said they did test the manticore, but apparently made a minor error. All his colleagues embraced and praised Allan, and Lisa gazed at him as if mesmerized. Here was a worthy student. Mr. Bennett demanded silence about today's events, and everyone departed home. Allan immediately checked his daily progress while traveling home, and was pleasantly surprised. When he listened to lectures, he had never witnessed such numbers even remotely. Apparently, it resulted from defeating the manticore. Seeing something once surpasses hearing about it 1,000 times, or something similar. In summary, practice represents the optimal method for improving lecture progress. The problem is that obtaining even a temporary license requires enrolling in a hunting academy, and without it, dungeon access is impossible. But the Transcendence Academy cannot issue Allan a license. Did he really need to save tuition again? Suddenly, Lisa called out to him and asked if she could speak with Allan. She's the huntress who works with their company, like the Star Sword's granddaughter. What does she even want? Our hero stopped and said he was listening. Lisa would be direct. She suggested meeting her grandfather. Allan replied indifferently that he didn't want to. Lisa was 100% certain the individual would agree. That's why she didn't even immediately understand the refusal. Our hero just wanted to reach home quickly and listen to lectures. Lisa is 31 and has never witnessed anything like this in her entire life. She simply doesn't know what to do. She suggested enrolling in an academy where not a single student exists. In fact, they are an academy only on paper. Who the hell is this Allan? He's performing some weird exercises. Even if the manticore was seriously weakened, she's still a level 4 monster and he cut her in half. Allan definitely wants to be a hunter. Lisa assured that they had everything necessary, good equipment, and everything else was sufficient. Only teachers were missing, but she could be. Allan said he doesn't want to. He doesn't need any teachers. And suddenly Lisa asked, what if she persuaded her grandfather to accept him as an apprentice? Every hunter dreams of learning from the Star Sword. Is it possible for the individual to miss such an opportunity? But Allan again replied that he wasn't interested and moved on. No, Lisa wouldn't let him go just like that. She screamed that the exam had a written portion and that she would pass it like our hero. He replied that he would manage somehow. And what about the dungeons? He can observe himself. He can be sent on a raid right now, but for that he needs to be an academy student. What does Allan care about her academy? Only government-approved institutions have the right to issue licenses. And then Lisa said that they had actually already been approved. If the individual agreed, he would be able to enter the dungeon tomorrow. Allan slowed down. There was no retreat. He says he doesn't need teachers. Fine. Lisa won't interfere. Give him a place to train independently and not charge him anything, so he just has to enroll. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Allan asked Lisa what she wanted from him. Until he becomes a hunter, he will represent her academy in competitions, and he must also tell everyone that he studies here. An extremely advantageous offer, as Allan will solve all his problems at once. At the same time, practically nothing is required of him. However, he asked why him. Lisa replied that it was all because she saw potential in him. Well, not bad. A mutually beneficial relationship. Our hero extended his hand and introduced himself as Allan Jefferson. Lisa also extended her hand and introduced herself. But our hero wants to say at some point this relationship will exhaust itself. The next day, Michael called Allan. The man asked what our hero had done yesterday. The supervisor had been fired. That's it. Actually, yesterday Allan asked Lisa for something. Namely, to tell their company that because she doesn't like the supervisor, she won't work with them. Allan didn't think he'd be fired right away. Well, the main thing is that Mr. Bennett is no longer here. Everyone is just glad. Meanwhile, our hero had already come to the Hunter's Academy where Lisa met him. She handed Allan a temporary license, effective as of yesterday. Our hero had his doubts, but she really did fix everything. Although he has not yet become a professional hunter, he has already taken the first step towards his dream. And this is just the beginning. Allan asked me to tell him how to go on raids. Lisa answered mysteriously that there was no need for that. She had prepared a weapon for our hero. Let him choose what he likes. Once he chooses, they will go to the dungeon. Lisa had already signed the contract. She thought that Allan wouldn't mind. Our hero took the pipe and started to kill the monsters. It seemed like someone said that they wouldn't interfere. So why did Lisa go with him? But Allan is the only student at the academy. How can she leave him unattended? But let him not worry. You could say that Allan has an individual lesson. Only the most capable students get this opportunity. Our hero is in the dungeon for the first time. Lisa is his lifeline. Although only kobolds live here. You can't let your guard down. Kobolds are level 2 monsters. They are ideal for training beginners with no combat experience. Luckily, Allan easily penetrates their magical armor, just like in the fight with the Manticore, although attacks that aren't imbued with mana should simply bounce off their defense. It's somehow strange that our hero's attacks are so effective. Besides, the progress of the lectures is growing slowly. Of course, not as fast as from killing the Manticore, but good progress for 2 kobolds. Definitely worth it. Plus, you can make some good money in the dungeons. Allan told Lisa it was time to speed up. It was like he was getting lucky, like in a video game. Lisa knew right away that something was wrong with him. But what is this fool doing? She is scared, muttering that she should stay away from the Hydra's poison. Ever since they got back from the dungeon, Allan has been staring at his switched-off phone. How many hours has he been sitting like that? The worst part is that the weirdness is just beginning. A newbie who finds himself in a dungeon for the first time chops down kobolds like a trained professional, constantly doing some strange exercises with the killed monsters. It would be better to call a special service than to drag them himself, but he decided to save money. Lisa won't be able to hide from her grandfather forever that she has a student, but she can't stand it any longer. Allan shouted that it was already midnight and he hadn't heard the lecture. Was he Cinderella or something? And what kind of lectures? Lisa doubts whether she made the right choice. Allan beams with happiness. He had no idea that he could earn so much in a day. Of course, he carried and cut up the carcasses himself, so it wasn't easy, but all the efforts paid off. The problem is that all this takes too much time and effort. I didn't even have time to listen to the lectures. Maybe we should ask Michael to work together. Our hero trusts him and they can stay in touch. And if the man opens his own business, then everyone will benefit. Allan will write to him when he has time. Now the question is what to do with the money. Of course, he can start saving again, but he thinks it's better to spend it usefully. By clearing dungeons, Allan both earns money and increases his progress in lectures, but everything is going slower than he expected. The last kobold didn't give anything at all. Is there a quick way to become stronger? Become as strong as the great heavenly sage Sun Wukong. That's right, Sun Wukong. Allan saw part of his lecture. Before, our hero didn't have a penny, so he even forgot about him. But now he can afford it. Basics of fighting with a staff and spear, dispersion, capture, and piercing. Upon completion of the course, Allan would receive the class Great Sage Spearman of rank S. He eagerly pressed the registration button. However, the entrance fee is a whopping 27 billion. Damn, that's some transcendental amount. So that's why the Academy is called that. Even an S-class hunter can't earn that much. Well, it can't be helped. Sometime later, I don't have time right now anyway. I wonder if they still sell anything at the Academy. Since there is no money for lectures, maybe he can at least buy equipment. Opening a transcendental shop with training equipment made for their students. Allan was amazed. I can't believe my eyes. The elixir, the Aegis shield, even the Longinus spear. Even if these are replicas, they are legendary items. And this is what they call training gear. Even Allan, who doesn't understand weapons, understands that this is something incredible. It means that all this was done by Transcendence. Who would have thought that you could get a legendary weapon so easily? Well, let's see what Allan will need. He decided to buy a copy of the Spear of Longinus. The dawn of individual value began. In the morning, Lisa noticed that Allan was training even harder. He knew that the spear would be expensive. He assumed that even a copy could cost several million. Allan realized the risk he was taking. Damn it, he's not blind, is he? 100 million. Where would he get that much money? He can't even resell the spear. Allan thought about just taking out a loan and then selling the spear for more, but that's not possible. And again, it all comes down to money. Even 100 million is already a ripoff. Our hero can't even imagine whether he will ever save up 27 billion to listen to the lectures of the great sage. Lisa asked him if he had a minute. It was about the Academy tournament. Allan had heard about it, but he didn't know the details. As the name suggests, it is a competition between academies. Each academy wants to prove that it is better than the others. Lisa gave us the position. This tournament evaluates the level of the academy. Such competitions are very diverse. Currently, the Hero Academy is at the 4th level. If Allan does well, he will move on to the next level. The higher the level, the better the academy is considered, and the more support the state will provide it. That's why everyone sends their best students. And yes, Allan guessed why Lisa was telling him all this now. She wants him to represent her academy. I wonder if participating in the competition will affect my progress in lectures. If you think about it, a tournament is also practice. Sounds good. So Allan agrees. Lisa was surprised. Well, they had agreed on this from the start. He asked how such tournaments were held. Everything was kept secret until the competition began. But as far as Lisa knows, the winner is the one who scores more points for the raid and the duel. Come to think of it, Allan's only combat experience is limited to kobolds and manticores. He has no idea how to fight humans. What to do? Once our hero has decided to participate, he must give it his all. I wonder if anyone will agree to train with him. Allan offered Lisa to be his sparring partner if she was not busy. The girl reluctantly took the bamboo sword. And what is she doing? But this is a great opportunity. Lisa Falk is a B-class hunter. Although B-class is far from the top of the top, she was taught by the Star Sword itself. Of course, Allan is just a newbie. It is not for him to judge real hunters. But he had long wanted to know what Lisa was capable of. She was shocked and asked if he even knew that she was a B-class hunter. Allan replied that, of course, so let him give him a head start. Okay, Lisa lazily said to start. Let him attack when he's ready. Allan doesn't refuse such an offer, so he pounced right away. Lisa dodged and blocked the blow without much difficulty. The movements are fast but extremely careless, and our hero's attacks are easy to read. Lisa must have overestimated him. A newbie is a newbie. He doesn't know where he got the confidence that he could fight her, but now Lisa will finish him off. However, she was simply shocked to see that Allan blocked her attack. Of course, he did it with great difficulty. His hands were shaking, but Lisa was shocked anyway. She didn't understand how Allan managed to block the blow with magic. The weapon should have slipped out of his hands, and her sword would be right at her throat. That's how it should have been, Allan said with a smile that he would fight seriously then. His movements changed. His attacks became more precise and faster. And it doesn't compare to what was... Xiang Yu said to start with obvious attacks, then dilute them with feints. In other words, distracting blows. But who has to make obvious attacks and obvious feints? If the opponent is able to assess the situation, he will change tactics. You can't think that the enemy will stand like a pillar and expose himself to blows. Obvious attacks will be met with obvious blocks. When you reflect the blow, you need to rotate the spear back. And Allan repeated this until the enemy opened up for his real attack. And when the moment came, he put all his strength into the blow. Danger appeared in Lisa's eyes, and she reacted instantly. Amidst the cloud of smoke, she tried to understand what it was. And then she saw Allan, who had flown into the wall, exhausted. What did she do? She hit with all her might without even thinking. Our hero said he was fine, but in the end he lost. Lisa can't believe it. He seriously thought he could win, but he did realize he was fighting a B-class hunter. Yes, a hunter is still a hunter. Fighting like a monster won't work. What's the difference between Allan and a professional hunter? He still has everything ahead of him. Suddenly, a notification came. The progress of the lecture grew as our hero expected, so it is necessary to develop in different directions. Yes, in video games it is not. So Allan understands that Lisa is free before the tournament. Then he asks to practice more when there are no raids. It will be useful for him. Our hero got it badly, and he wants to continue fighting him. But who cares about his oddities? The main thing is that he tries. Lisa promised to work with Allan every evening. She would do everything he asked, and if he won, she would give him all the prize money. Allan is perplexed. He didn't know they also give money there. Lisa began to remember how much there was. It seemed like $100,000, something like that. The desired spear immediately popped into Allan's head. He started asking with shining eyes when this tournament was. Lisa replied that another 2 weeks were needed. Allan did not waste a minute. He asked for sandbags and then to break off something from the wall. Something heavier is needed, otherwise it won't be as effective. Lisa's head is spinning. Allan started to drag a huge piece of concrete. The girl sighed and said that the sandbags were in the corner. She doesn't understand anything, and Allan only mumbles that the 100,000 will go to him. 2 weeks later, the day of the tournament arrived. Spectators gathered at the stadium. Everyone hopes that there will be at least someone worthy. They say that the guy from last year is also participating. Finally, the guy in the green shirt got to the place. He didn't think there would be such a crowd. Of course, if there is something to see, there will be spectators. Although there are many more awakened, you can't often see hunters fighting. Besides, where would we be without recruiters from guilds and mercenaries? And there must be someone from the government, too. The passers-by thought that this guy was a real Sheila. Oh, right. He's in a hurry. The guy asked the attendant where the waiting room was. He doesn't know what to do. He's so nervous about coming alone. He was so scared that he couldn't even move from his sister. This is the equipment of the opponents. I wonder how much it costs and muscles. Looks like everyone is confident. Everyone is so strong. No wonder, because the academy send their best students. Suddenly, on the bench opposite, the guy noticed our Liam with an old weapon and a spear bag made from clothes. They started to mock our hero as a country bumpkin. They are probably from some backwater trying to make a name for themselves. And why did he even choose such an academy? Allan hears these idiots. He won't pay attention. He needs to watch the lecture. The guy in the earth shirt looking at Allan thought that he was obviously his brother. Just like when you go to a new class and you don't know anyone and you try to act busy. You're glued to your phone just like him. Our protagonist probably also wants to participate. But he is worried and just looks at his phone since there is no one to even talk to. The camaraderie is growing stronger, and Allan doesn't even know it. The guy approached our hero and timidly said hello, asking if he was participating in the tournament. He introduced himself as Cole, a 19-year-old awakened from birth. Allan greeted him and introduced himself in return. Cole asked to sit next to him. Our hero is young. Apparently, high school students are also participating. Cole pointed to Rob Leslie, a promising student at Gochuri Academy. He was seen pouting with an axe. He relied on strength for everything. Now he's arguing with an opponent who was told to go away, and since he was told, be kind enough to leave. So Bill, a student at the Mint Academy, listened to him. Actually, Rob started it. Is his brain a muscle? Everyone says Bill is very unusual. He fights with twin daggers. Allan doesn't understand why Cole is telling all this. He didn't even ask. Cole seems to be what they call a chatterbox. The guy said he was just interested in stuff. Off to the side, Sean White, a student at Revenant Academy, told the boys to keep it down. They weren't alone after all, and Sean quickly calmed them down. Cole said that this is a gifted student of the Revenant Academy, and in fact the winner of this tournament. Cole asked how that was. Isn't he a contender for victory? He usually doesn't participate in the tournament. He says he has no reason to fight such weaklings. Apparently something happened at the academy and they decided to send him away. And since he's here, the winner is obvious. Cole asked if our hero had heard of the Star Sword. Well, who hadn't? They say his granddaughter invited Sean to her academy. Cole doesn't know why, but he refused. He must be very confident in himself to reject the offer of the granddaughter of the Star Sword itself. No, Allan thinks the reason is different. Lisa doesn't have a single student except him. Sean knocked over the trash can, screaming about why he had to compete with such losers. If it weren't for Uncle's wish, we would have moved to the 3rd level long ago. Even if the scum managed to win, it will still remain scum. Winning a tournament like this won't bring him recognition. If Sean had known that things would turn out this way, he would have agreed to that girl's offer. He refused because he didn't want to study at some unknown academy, but after all, she is the granddaughter of the Star Sword. But he could have just used her and then gotten rid of her. Suddenly he noticed Allan and thought what a plebeian he was. How bad could it be that even such people were participating now? The first stage of the Academy tournament will begin soon. The arena was packed so densely that movement through the crowd proved nearly impossible. The individual apologized to the woman for bumping into her before proceeding to his companion. The photographer inquired about the situation. Perhaps he encountered someone familiar. No, she simply resembles someone he knows. The initial phase will now involve racing through a maze. They only mentioned needing to escape the labyrinth, while prohibiting attacks on fellow competitors. No additional information was provided. Despite this being a level 4 competition, they likely didn't construct an ordinary maze that only the most fortunate person could navigate. Numerous monsters probably inhabit the area, providing students with hints directing them toward the exit. The individual believes judges are evaluating whether contestants possess all essential skills for dungeon expeditions. Incidentally, this year's students demonstrate impressive strength. They displayed Sean in close-up on the display. You can immediately tell he operates on another level. The crowd doesn't truly comprehend much about it, but he's simply incredible. Many people consider Sean the obvious victor. Lisa rose from her position upon hearing his name. What was his purpose here? Oh, she attracted that man's notice. She cannot allow anyone to discover she's the Star Sword's granddaughter. She desires to observe the tournament peacefully. She wonders how Allan is performing. As he suspected, the barrier cannot be penetrated. Well, he'll have to exit like everyone else. Had he known it would be this way, he would have enrolled in Theseus's presentations. Using the power that relocates mountains twice, you can shatter the barrier. Theseus is a hero of Roman and Greek legends who defeated the Minotaur and escaped the maze. Allan would have acquired several techniques for maze navigation. Upon reaching a particular location, he encountered a path divergence. Well, he will follow the fundamental principle. You simply must adhere to one direction. Eventually, it will discover an exit. The only issue is when it will finally occur. Allan chose to proceed left, but suddenly an indescribable sensation emerged. He doesn't comprehend, but for some reason it appears that instead of maintaining leftward movement, it's better to go this direction. Perhaps this is the sixth sense intuition that Chiron discussed. Allan remained there and contemplated for several seconds. Well, he doesn't know. Perhaps trusting your intuition is worthwhile. Several students have already withdrawn from the tournament. It's peculiar. Judging by these advertisements, the others are continuously battling monsters. But for some reason, everything remains quiet with Allan. Is it truly his intuition that indicates how to avoid the monsters? So if he reaches 100% in Master's Metamorphosis, he will be able to predict the future and such. Like, his opponent attacks in 3 seconds. No, that doesn't occur. But dreaming doesn't hurt. Cole encountered Allan in the labyrinth and told him to be cautious. There could be a monster waiting around every corner. Our hero didn't think that by selecting another route, they would immediately encounter this individual. Cole is surprised that Allan walks so confidently, as if he knows the way. Our hero said he simply goes wherever he desires. Cole is shocked this could end poorly. He knows how to exit the labyrinth and will lead. The left and right hand technique. You always have to adhere to one side, then you'll find your way out easily. Allan said it would take too long. Simply trust your feelings. And since Cole fears that our hero will get lost, Allan suggests separating. And anyway, he asked why the individual had followed along. Cole replied that Allan was his fellow sufferer. Well, the individual didn't come from the academy. He came independently. Looking at our hero, he decided that he was alone too. So that's why he spoke to him. Then Cole thinks weaklings stick together. Allan is out, but he probably appears like one. Since he is also alone, Cole will make an exception for him and show him something incredible. The individual showed a picture of his adorable little sister. Allan said she was very cute, but he was pleased to chat. Hopes never to meet again. Cole fell to the ground and begged not to leave. He really stuck to me. Even an awakened person can be frightened in a place like this. Allan thinks that if he were younger, he would be scared too. Sure, Cole talks excessively, but he did say many useful things in the waiting room and still know. No matter how old he is also a participant in the tournament and therefore an opponent. Cole keeps saying that he is alone. Didn't his parents and sister come to support him? Oh, the individual said that his parents died and he has no one except his little sister. At that moment, Allan remembered himself and his loneliness. Damn, he blurted it out without thinking. Cole must be feeling awkward now. The individual apologized. It was a long time ago. He just wanted to say that his sister is still little and can't come to support him. Yes, Allan said Cole was right. They were going to share the same misfortune. If he wants, they can go together. But our hero will immediately say that they are not a team, and the prize for first place will go to Allan. A couple of minutes later, Cole hurriedly asked where our hero was running, but the individual himself said he would follow him. Yes, Cole remembers, but he can't rush headlong. How so? Allan doesn't hesitate at all. He's too sure of himself. He chooses a path without even thinking, as if he knows where to go. But no, that's just impossible. The individuals reached a dead end. Cole barely caught up. Looks like it's here. Allan pushed the wall and the passage opened. At this moment, the host congratulated the winner of the first floor. This was the long-awaited end of the labyrinth. Allan set a new time record, half the previous one. The audience can't believe their eyes. Who is it? Sean is in the middle of a fight. And on the huge screen, Lisa and the entire stadium saw Allan's photo. He was disappointed, a waste of time. He hadn't met a single monster. Zero progress. Cole doesn't know how it all turned out this way. He just happened to run into Allan. He just wanted to work with him on the team. Our hero did it in just 27 minutes. People are shocked because they are hearing about the Dream Academy for the first time. The winner was a student from some CD academy. Yes. Who would have thought that Sean would come in third? They're making so much noise. They're not letting me concentrate on the lecture. In the waiting room, a disgruntled Sean approached Allan. All the participants froze in anticipation. Does he really want to say something? Why is he looking at our hero like that? Sean said with a proud grin that Allan was just lucky. The individuals giggled. Well, of course. How else could a student from some unknown academy win? It was even envious. If only luck would smile upon them. I wonder what Sean needed from our hero at all. Oh well, I need to finish listening to the lectures. The manager entered the room to announce what awaited the participants in the second stage. They would have to fight each other one-on-one. Since all the individuals are on level 4 to ensure everyone is on equal terms. It is forbidden to enhance weapons with mana. However, they can still strengthen their bodies. And it should be taken into account that if one of the participants is not in a condition to fight, the referee will stop the fight. 32 students made it to the second round. In that case, there should be 5 rounds. I wonder who Allan will be paired with. So, since there are no questions, the managers will start compiling the tournament grid. Suddenly, one of the participants raised his hand and said that he was withdrawing from the tournament. Lisa left the stadium. She was almost burned. She never would have thought that Allan would win. She even screamed in surprise. He'll be back when everything settles down. Suddenly, she heard someone's indignant cries. Some men were indignant that there were supposed to be 32 participants, but they started right away with the semifinals, all because the others refused to participate. Damn, all the fun has been ruined. There's no point in betting now. The organizer said that Sean would win. That's obvious. That's true, but the odds for his victory are too low. No one in their right mind would bet on another participant. But suddenly, someone placed a suitcase on the counter with a bet of 100 million on Allan Jefferson. Everyone looked at the man in the robe as if he were crazy. They began to explain to him that Allan was just lucky and no one had heard of his academy before. Who was this man? Back in the waiting room for a few minutes, the individual withdrew from the tournament. Cole heard that this is not uncommon in level 4 tournaments. The same ones always win. They say Sean doesn't care about the rules. If you fight him, you'll definitely end up crippled. No one would want to be paired with him. They are level 4. If they get hurt, no one will care. And besides him, there are serious opponents. The individuals decided that if they continued, they would simply serve as a springboard for their already famous academies. Better to just give up. Thus, almost half of the tournament participants withdrew from the second round. And that's how it all started. Cole started to rush around and panic, and so there were only 5 left. The 2 of them, Sean, Rob, and Bill. First fight, Allan Jefferson and Rob Leslie. The second match is Sean White versus Cole Stanley. Bill gets an auto win. Allan won the first stage. I wonder if he gets to the final now. Will he be first, regardless of the result? Our hero asked why Cole was shaking. The individual was shocked that Allan wasn't afraid. Soon they were going to duel, and he still has to fight Sean. The fight hadn't even started, and Cole had already written himself off as a loser, because Cole knows it will happen. Then Allan asked why he should participate. Let him film, but the individual timidly replied that he couldn't. The manager came out and said that Allan and Rob were coming on now. Our hero told Cole that since he had decided to fight, he should fight to the very end. Who knows, he might even win. Allan had already risen from his seat to go on stage when suddenly the individual grabbed his hand. He asked if our hero wasn't nervous. Allan replied that of course not. He only cared about how much experience he would get for the fight. Cole asked what he was talking about, but our hero quickly left. The 100 million won would be his. So all the spectators have been waiting for this moment for a long time. Now that all the punks have been eliminated, only the strongest remain. Let's meet the participants of the first fight. The new record holder of the race in the labyrinth. Who beat all the monsters? Talent or banal luck? A participant shrouded in mystery. It was a good presentation that everyone withdrew from the competition. Rob said that our hero's luck would not help him here. Before his crushing power, any tricks and ruses are useless. He will grind anyone into dust. A giant with an axe robbed Leslie from the Gooey Academy. What a pity. Allan won the first stage and immediately ran into Rob. Apparently, luck turned against him. Well, who knows? Our hero replied that it was too early to judge which of them was lucky. Rob was furious he would make Allan regret his words. Cole watched the start of the match closely on television. But then, looking at his opponent, he thought that it was not the time to worry about others. After all, very soon he will come face to face with Sean White himself. Cole trembled and remembered Allan's words. Once he decided to fight, he had to fight to the very end. Who knows, maybe he could win. Hell, that's not it. Both Rob and Sean represent famous academies. The likes of our hero are no match for them. Cole decided to give up before it was too late, but he was distracted by the enthusiastic cries of the participants. Nobody expected this. The fight was over in the blink of an eye. The winner of the duel is Allan Jefferson from Dream Academy. Sean leaned against the wall and said that the place of scum is with scum. Cole stood up abruptly and said that he would show Sean too. Let's go back a few minutes. You wouldn't expect anything less from Rob's devastating force. But Allan easily dodges his attacks. It seems that luck is still on his side. Rob doesn't understand what's wrong with this individual. Rob attacks without stopping, so much so that he himself is already exhausted, and Allan seems not to take him seriously. Rob can't figure out why his attacks aren't working. He swung his signature blow at Allan, but our hero knocked the axe out of his opponent's hands with one swing of his spear. Rob fell to the ground and shook. No one expected this. The fight was over in the blink of an eye. The winner is Allan Jefferson from Dream Academy. Our hero was upset. The progress of the lectures increased by only 1%. Allan thought he would get more for fighting other students. Many have surrendered, so There will be fewer fights now, and the time until the end of the free pass is getting shorter and shorter. Our hero will not only not have time to complete the Buddha course, but also Chiron and even Xiangyu. He needs to tighten his belt to save up for a spear and extend his pass. Allan simply must win. As soon as our hero entered the waiting room, Cole was already standing at the door. The individual was agitated, shouting that Allan, it turns out, is strong. The manager entered the room and told the participants of the second fight to get ready. Cole and Sean were invited on stage. Sean nudged Cole's shoulder, telling him to get out of the way. Cole asked if Allan remembered what he had said in the maze about sticking together. Cole doesn't know why, but when he saw our hero, he felt a kindred spirit. And so when he defeated Rob, the individual was happy, as if he had won. But at the same time, he envied our hero. Cole is never lucky. He has no talent. He is not that strong. The individual just wants his sister to be proud of him. The manager called him again. Cole ran, and Allan told him to give it his all. Our hero grinned. They will meet in the final. Cole muttered under his breath that he could do it, that everything would work out. Sean told me to stop mumbling. It's annoying. In general, everything is infuriating. It is a huge humiliation for him to participate in such a tournament. And this trash is his opponent. The referee said that before the fight he would remind him of the rules again. However, Cole, due to his thoughts and stress, ignored everything. Even now, Sean can tell that this individual is prey, a worthless piece of crap who lives only to be eaten. He's at the bottom of the food chain for a predator like Sean. Cole is just prey. He was just lucky. We need to remind the scum where he belongs. Sean should have won both legs. Of course he did. He was head and shoulders above all those freaks. And yet, what the hell? Cole, though, with shaking hands, raised his sword. Does this wretched thing really think it can win? Sean asked the judge when they would start. The man replied that the individuals would be announced soon. So now it's time for the second fight of the second stage. Cole believes he can handle it just like his brother Allan. And Sean thought that there was no point in this tournament in the first place. He decided to end it all with one blow. Sean, as always, lives up to expectations. He immediately unleashed a mountain of furious, precise blows on his opponent. Cole is bound hand and foot. The judge doubts he can hold out much longer. Sean hit him in the chest with the hilt of his sword and told him to sit down and keep his head down. Cole is down and writhing in pain. Is that all? He can't beat Sean, but it doesn't matter. He's no match for him. Is there really nothing Cole can do? He wanted his sister to be proud of him. He wanted to become as strong as Allan. And at that moment, Cole began to rise. He decided he had to hit Sean at least once. If only I could touch him with at least the tip of my sword. Cole almost touched Sean's face with his sword, but then fell down exhausted. The crowd rejoices. The winner is a well-known individual from the Academy Revenant. It's no wonder people understood that that kid wasn't fit to hold a candle to Sean. Sean clearly doesn't belong in a level 4 competition. He's a beast, but he's a master of his craft. There's a bleeding wound on his cheek. The vile scum has hurt him. Suddenly, Sean heard someone's mocking voice. Someone said that he beat up a weakling and didn't bat an eyelid. Maybe this Sean isn't so cool, and the individual himself still can't believe that the scum heard him, the elite. Suddenly, Sean told the judge that he was withdrawing from the tournament. And then he walked up to Cole and kicked him in the head. He was fed up with this freak show. This tournament was a bunch of degenerates. They accept just anyone. Sean shouts that this is why they won't get anything higher than level 4. The judge asks in a panic what the individual is doing. The fight is already over. If he doesn't stop, the organizers will be forced to take action. Sean asked, "What measures?" Not to disqualify him, he already aren't the organizers themselves, sick of watching these bugs scurrying around hoping to become hunters. They crawl, forgetting their place. Before Sean could finish speaking, Allan rushed at him, and our hero kept waiting for them to meet in the finale, but he got tired of it. He'll beat Sean up right now if he insists, Allan said to quickly remove his foot. "Oh, he's talking about the foot on Cole's head." The individual asked, "What if he doesn't want to?" Then Allan kicked Sean in the leg and immediately ran up to his friend. "This is so touching. Sean is about to cry." Allan asked, "What was wrong with him? Did he really like looking down on people? Who in their right mind would put their foot on someone else?" If he doesn't understand, Sean will explain. He's sick of some redneck forgetting his place. Allan asked if they were worse, they couldn't even dream anymore. Sean snorted. Well, well, he didn't know that anyone believed in such fairy tales these days. Maybe our hero will also say that if you train hard, you will succeed. Meanwhile, the spectators do not understand why the judges do not intervene. This needs to be stopped immediately. However, this is an order from above, and the judges themselves do not understand it. All they can do is watch. Lisa is very worried about her student. Back on stage, Sean said that Allan was even dumber than he thought. So he will tell the non-entity how the world works. Without talent, you are nothing. To succeed, you have to step on heads. There is no place for dreams here. In the world, there are only worthy and losers. That's how it works. In fact, Allan used to think that way himself. All these 9 painfully long years when our hero endured everything just to become a hunter. He was constantly faced with harsh reality. He hated himself for having neither money nor talent. He hated himself for his helplessness. The employment barely kept Allan financially stable, yet he couldn't progress beyond survival mode. Nothing seems more pitiful than desperately holding on to dreams that remain out of reach, despite relentless effort. How often had Allan questioned himself? What direction would his existence have taken if he had surrendered? If he had selected an alternative route? He was perpetually surrendering to anxiety, questioning his abilities. This pattern leads countless individuals into hopelessness. Allan instructed the referee to watch over Cole and approached Sean to inquire about his perspective on the matter. Following these statements, the protagonist charged toward his opponent while wielding his weapon. The referee yelled for cessation since it violated regulations. Sean assumed it was some sort of prank and instantly deflected the strike. Labeled Allan a pitiful insect, though he remains equally insignificant, Sean hurled the protagonist away and commenced his own aggressive offensive. His strength is formidable. It's understandable why everyone holds him in such high regard. During the battle with Rob, Allan never questioned his triumph. But at this moment? Absolutely not. The protagonist commands himself to avoid dwelling on it. This isn't the appropriate time. One must simply follow instinct and rely on intuition. Allan pierced Sean's torso with his spear's tip. Every referee is stunned. They insist on immediate termination. Sean screamed for them to move aside. The young man kept reminding himself that he was a hunter, the apex predator. Yet he cannot comprehend why this worthless individual also possesses a predator's gaze. Sean smirked. Dreams are harmless enough. However, he proposed demonstrating what would become of Allan's aspirations when confronted with harsh reality. Sean instantly attacked, but the protagonist parried. The opponent cannot understand. Is it merely his perception, or is Allan becoming more powerful with each defensive move? Resembling a beast evolving directly in front of him, Allan strikes with his spear against Sean's flank. Sean cannot accept being repelled by some child, not once in his existence. Now the genuine battle commences. A lethal presence manifested around Sean. Allan cannot manipulate mana at this stage. He possesses no defense against it. He must flee. That represents the optimal choice. Yet why does the protagonist refuse to escape? That would be the correct decision. It seems as though retreating would mean abandoning everything he has discovered. Within his mind, Xiang Yu's words echo. He was encircled by the Chu Kingdom's forces. He had already described how their war cries and melodies resonated from every direction. Once, a pupil questioned him about charging toward the enemy when the battle's result was already determined. That was the truth. Xiang Yu had been defeated, and nothing could alter that reality. Honestly, that marked the first time he experienced despair. He felt terror and defeat frightened him most, yet Xiang Yu still charged into combat. And do you understand why? It was simply necessary. Even when all evidence suggests your failure, continue fighting. Battle like a wild animal and maintain faith in victory regardless of circumstances. He, Xiang Yu, fought and was defeated. Even possessing the strength to move mountains, eternal victory remains impossible. That represents the authentic warrior's essence. And that explains why Xiang Yu became the supreme ruler. The force that displaces mountains from their foundations will eliminate any obstacles. The spirit capable of revolutionizing the entire world will dominate it. Sean roared at Allan to stop rushing him. He was the hunter in this situation, and they were merely his stepping stones. The opponents with renewed vigor and extraordinary power clashed against each other. The impact with which Allan struck Sean prevented all referee attempts at interference. The audience eagerly awaits discovering the victor, since they cannot observe anything through the debris cloud. When the dust settled, Sean expelled blood and collapsed to the earth drained, while Allan stood above him, weary but victorious. The entire arena erupted in applause and chanted our protagonist's identity. Lisa simply gazed at him with amazement. 14 days earlier, Allan could barely deflect a mana-enhanced attack, and now he employs aura. Abruptly, Lisa spotted that identical robed figure. He was gradually moving closer to the platform. It was the same person she observed at the betting establishment. The individual removed his hood and exclaimed that it was inconceivable. Lisa is naturally astonished, but not to such extremes, as if Allan had shattered universal principles before his sight. Incidentally, this individual wagered on the protagonist's victory. When Lisa turned to observe, the cloaked person had already departed. Therefore, Allan was removed from competition. The organizers admitted that Sean had acted inappropriately, but he had already withdrawn from the tournament, while our protagonist interfered despite being a competitor. The referee cautioned Allan about the repercussions, but he ignored the warning. The protagonist's behavior broke tournament regulations, and that cannot be disputed. Yet why didn't anyone halt Sean before Allan stepped in? No issue. The protagonist understood his actions' implications. Naturally, Sean was also disqualified, despite his prior withdrawal, and weaponizing a blade with aura constitutes attempted homicide. Admittedly, he will avoid legal proceedings, but the Hunters organization will ban him from examination attempts for 5 years. Bill became the automatic champion, with Cole achieving second place and Rob securing third position. Fortunate individual. Winning without combat represents genuine victory. The important thing is that Allan's educational progress continues excellently. Following the confrontation with Sean, the gained experience increased dramatically. Based on Xiang Yu's teachings, it already exceeds 50%. Considering this, that unusual power Allan experienced during combat might have emerged precisely because progress surpassed 50%. Let's examine this. Perhaps enroll in another program. Higher progress makes everything simpler. Lisa pursued the protagonist and inquired about his condition, whether he suffered significant pain. From his perspective, everything appears satisfactory. Allan may appear fragile, but he is actually resilient. Lisa exhaled with relief. Suddenly, the protagonist offered her an apology. The young woman asked with surprise for what reason. Allan stated that she would have won if he hadn't interfered unnecessarily. Oh, so that was his concern. Lisa said he had no reason to apologize. She simply wanted to confirm his well-being. Allan was expecting the monetary reward after all. Or did Lisa misunderstand? Correct. At that instant, the protagonist felt all the situation's disappointment, so he genuinely forgot what to do next. He was left without Longinus's spear, and he still needed to update his membership. Lisa asked what he intended to purchase with it. Allan responded that he had noticed one spear and genuinely desired to acquire it. Well, it's not catastrophic, but the protagonist would be dishonest if he claimed no regrets. True, if I hadn't interfered, I would have felt much worse regret. I'm certain the financial problem will resolve itself somehow. Cole, gesturing excitedly, rushed to Allan. He inquired if he was departing already. The protagonist confirmed his intention. Cole remained quiet momentarily, then asked if he could become equally powerful through dedicated training. Allan observed Cole briefly and then responded that it wouldn't be simple. In reality, he clearly lacked the natural ability to become a hunter. Certainly, people claim anything is achievable through hard work, but reality is harsh. Dreams and principles alone won't take you far. Allan advised the boy not to concentrate on becoming a hunter. He could pursue other paths. Cole remains youthful and has abundant time, so he shouldn't feel discouraged. The young man listened carefully to the protagonist and then smiled and agreed that he was correct about something. Well, Cole didn't want to dampen anyone's spirits. He simply came to bid farewell. Afterward, he expressed gratitude to Allan for everything and departed. The protagonist then advised Cole not to allow anyone to dictate his choices, whether himself or others. The young man lacks talent and cannot change that reality. That's what they'll inform him. They will claim he cannot succeed, that only disappointment awaits him. But Cole should remember that no one's judgment should define his reality. If he desires something, proceed. He must pursue it, and everything else is irrelevant. Cole finally mentioned that he would visit Allan with his sister eventually. Lisa is delightfully surprised. The protagonist only responded that he constantly meddles in others' affairs, but she sees nothing problematic with that. Additionally, Allan has his first admirer. The protagonist said that another pupil would be preferable to merely a fan. We needed to seize the opportunity and recruit him to our institution. Following these statements, Allan continued onward. Lisa was deeply moved by the words, "our institution." Very well. The protagonist worked diligently, so let's purchase him a new spear. Let him believe it's his scholarship. There's a store here that her grandfather particularly favors. They will visit there. Lisa shouldn't expect Allan to select something inexpensive. A gentleman approached an elegant residence and asked the security guard if the master was present. Yes, but he was in meditation and requested no disturbances. Nevertheless, the matter couldn't wait, so the man requested to announce that he was waiting. The entrance opened, and Jake Paul, Star Sword's lieutenant, welcomed him. Kristoff seemed to make his wishes clear when he requested no interruptions. Or does Jake dare to disregard his commands? The pressure is overwhelming. The man cannot even move. Jake spoke weakly that Miss Lisa had competed in the Academy tournament. Kristoff reduced his aura, indicating his interest. Her subordinates haven't investigated everything yet, but it appears she has acquired a new pupil. Jake mentioned he could investigate independently, but no. Kristoff must personally observe what he's capable of. Allan continued his regular training regimen. Eventually, he concluded. He asked Lisa why she was observing him so disapprovingly. The young woman said he was imagining it. Well, he wanted a new spear so desperately. He selected it so carefully, and ultimately, he departed empty-handed. Decided it would be wiser to retain his current one. Allan said he simply wasn't deserving of such a present. Dishonest. He clearly wasn't the type to decline such generosity. Lisa sees through his facade. Ever since Allan witnessed a weapon crafted by the Transcendentals, he cannot even consider a standard one. And it's all due to these calculations. Allan thought, why purchase a spear when he could simply request, say, 20 million in currency? But Longinus's spear price had risen. It appears money obtained through dishonest methods doesn't qualify. Curse it. Now the protagonist fears taking any action. Lisa offered to cover all expenses. Such an opportunity occurs once in a lifetime, but Allan simply remained quiet. Incidentally, she questioned him about his mana enhancement method. Yes, without it, he cannot utilize magic. Lisa personally witnessed how Allan penetrated monster armor, and judging by his tournament performance, his technique is clearly not elementary level. Yet she never observed the protagonist training it. Speaking of which, Allan doesn't know any mana enhancement methods. This is a technique that enables optimal mana utilization. There are numerous different variations of this technique. Based on effectiveness, it's categorized into basic and advanced techniques. Each hunter possesses their own mana enhancement method. Some even patent theirs. That's why Allan wanted to enter the elite institution. He asked Lisa if she was missing the Star Sword mana enhancement technique. She replied that her grandfather prohibited it. No surprise, otherwise there would be student crowds here, but Lisa offered to teach her technique. She developed her own. She always wanted to instruct. And Allan thought she had no ability whatsoever. Or does she simply exist in the Star Sword's shadow? But she's correct. A hunter cannot accomplish anything without mana. And in the battle with Sean, the protagonist felt the power difference between someone who knows how to use it and someone who doesn't. Since Allan has a new lecture slot available, why not take a course on mana manipulation? Lisa didn't understand his silence. Did she ask something difficult? Well, nothing can be helped. Let him remain quiet. Lisa wished him success with the training and went to handle her business. Allan was surprised. He didn't think she was so businesslike. Okay, if he leaves before she returns, let him secure the doors. Allan waved and said not to worry and continued contemplating what course to select. Where is a mentor when you need one? Lisa was embarrassed. Does she really appear like she has nothing better to do? Although recently she has. Allan enrolled in a lecture by Archmage Merlin. He explains what mana represents. In a world ruled by cause and effect principles, mana is capable of destroying these universal laws. That's its nature. Upon lecture completion, the protagonist will receive the S-Class Mentor ability. It seems Merlin's lesson is driving him to madness too, almost like with Buddha. Well, the professor said that's sufficient explanation. It's time for practical application. Allan was assigned a daily task again. Now he must create 1,000 mana spheres. Well, at least he must attempt. The protagonist stood and focused. Sensing and controlling mana isn't particularly challenging. He thinks it's all thanks to Chiron's lectures, but it's still not simple. Even though Allan can sense mana, he cannot give it form. And how does he create these spheres? Merlin said to connect his consciousness to the external world with mana. He transfers his imagination's product into reality, deceiving it and persuading it that everything occurs according to natural laws. And the most vivid example of this is a force that doesn't exist anywhere in nature. Mana manifestation in the form of an aura. Finally, a tiny mana sphere materialized in Allan's palms. He even questions whether it will be accepted. But Allan is confident that he will improve with time. But his studies were interrupted by a man's shouts. The protagonist immediately recognized the Star Sword. Kristoff came to observe who had entered Lisa's institution. But what's this individual holding in his hands? If my perception isn't mistaken, it's a mana concentration. It's not simple to create something like this. Allan may appear foolish, but he possesses talent. There is only one reason why such a gifted individual came to Lisa's institution. He wants to exploit her. Kristoff asked the individual who he was. Allan introduced himself and said he was pleased to meet him. How terrifying. Who would have known that Grandfather Star Sword would appear? Allan had only seen him online. It was incredible that he finally got to meet him personally. The protagonist said that Kristoff was probably going to see Lisa. It was unfortunate, but she had left on some errand. The man was taken aback. In Korea, people only address others by their first names if they are close to them. It seems he didn't address her properly. Kristoff asked sharply why Allan was still standing. After all, his killing intent, which fills the air, paralyzes everyone below S-Class. It seems that Allan can resist it because of his unshakable heart. The Star Sword demanded to know what the individual needed here. However, the protagonist doesn't understand what he's discussing. Kristoff said that with such talent, Allan would have been accepted into any institution, but he decided to get closer to Lisa. Why? Star Sword drew his katana and told him not to even consider lying. Allan began waving his hands and making excuses, saying that they had misunderstood each other. The protagonist suddenly felt a dangerous aura. Kristoff didn't think he would get an answer so easily. He swung his sword so that Allan barely dodged another centimeter, and that would have been fatal. Meanwhile, Lisa came to her grandfather's residence, but the workers said that he had departed, and he didn't specify exactly when he would return. The housekeeper thought that Chairman Paul knew more and suggested calling him, and Lisa simply wanted to inform her grandfather about Allan. It's unclear where he could have gone, and Kristoff kept demanding that the protagonist answer what his objective was. Lisa thought it was problematic. She wanted to keep it secret for as long as possible. But after competing in the tournament, concealing Allan will no longer work. So I decided to address the problem. Then Lisa asked the housekeeper to contact the chairman. But here he is right now. Jake is pleased to see them. The young woman hasn't visited them for a long time. And just in time he was about to call her. Lisa asked in confusion why, and Jake said that the master went to her institution. Lisa fled headlong. How could she lower her guard? I knew he would come, but I didn't think it would be so soon. Lisa must not allow these two to meet without her. What do you mean, the scabbard? Kristoff didn't even draw the sword from it. It seemed he wasn't trying to kill Allan, more like just to subdue him. The man asked again who the protagonist really was. Allan genuinely doesn't understand what Kristoff wants. He must have misunderstood something. Suddenly, the Star Sword said that the individual can control mana, moves perfectly in battle, and still continues to claim that Kristoff got something wrong. Without even thinking, lies brazenly to his face. Star Sword began swinging his katana again. Allan doesn't know what Lisa told him, but asks him to calm down. It seems like the protagonist said something wrong, but he can't figure out what. Kristoff said he was going to discuss it all to consider the circumstances that brought the individual here, but it was all deception. Star Sword had no intention of discussing anything with the protagonist. Who cares? The man won't listen to Allan, but his movements make it clear that no matter what he says, he won't kill. If the Star Sword really wanted to kill the protagonist, it would have done so the moment it sensed his presence. The one who is above the stars themselves, the Star Sword. The person closest to Allan's ideals, the protagonist, was given a simply marvelous chance. Kristoff saw that the villain's mood had changed. The man has seen many hunters in his life, but only one looked him in the eye without fear. This individual must be very strong. And yet, what did he need from his granddaughter? Damn. Allan doesn't see the man's attacks, doesn't even feel them. Kristoff has the protagonist pinned to the wall. Allan didn't notice such a simple strike. The power of the Star Sword is beyond comprehension. I wonder how much longer the protagonist will last. Allan started to run and attack, but Kristoff threw him back with one wave of his hand, saying that it was such mediocrity. The protagonist just had to answer, but no, something is wrong, something is missing. It can't end here, not even a little bit longer. Tricks won't help Allan, but as long as Kristoff isn't serious, he has a chance. He'll only have one opportunity. He needs to finish it all with one strike. But how? Allan continued to skillfully dodge the swings of the Star Sword. Merlin said to use mana by subordinating it to willpower, to deceive to convince the world that his imagination's fruit is subject to natural laws. Allan was not capable of more at the moment, so he concentrated all his attention and energy on this strike. In the end, the protagonist collapsed to the floor without strength. How painful. Kristoff shouted that the scoundrel had finally shown his true face. What true face? He had attacked first. Speaking only hurts more. The man's patience snapped when Allan asked when Lisa would return. Okay, since the individual is asking for it, he will personally send the protagonist to the next world. Allan has already resigned himself to the end. But then Lisa finally burst into the room, screaming for them both to stop. She asks what Grandpa did here. The young woman ran up to Allan in panic. He was covered in bruises. The protagonist replied that it was nothing serious, but it still hurt. Kristoff snorted, saying that such a weakling still dared to call himself a man. Allan replied, that man or woman, it didn't matter. Anyone would be hurt if they were hit by a Star Sword. The protagonist wouldn't be surprised that he doesn't care who he hits. Lisa is shocked. She has never seen anyone talk to Grandpa or the Star Sword like that. Allan wants to at least know why he's being treated this way. Or since Kristoff is a Star Sword, can he do whatever he wants? Lisa told her grandfather to stop. She apologized to the protagonist for what he had gotten into. Allan said it was just a couple of bruises and it wasn't her fault. Lisa said she would explain everything later. She was really sorry. By the way, it looks like Allan could use a stop at the emergency room, so he'll probably go. Yes, Lisa said not to worry. She will pay for the treatment. She is glad that our protagonist understood everything and left on his own. And now Lisa turned to her grandfather. They needed to talk. Oh, she decided that she would tell him everything, but now she can't even open her mouth. Grandfather said that Allan was suspicious and that his granddaughter should stay away from him. Lisa was trembling all over, but she said he wasn't suspicious at all. But how could she know? How would you know? You know nothing. Do as I say. I've had to listen to this all my life. So Grandpa completely ignored Lisa's opinion, even in the institution. A compromise that she found her grandfather interfered every now and then. He gave each student a reprimand, so they all left unable to bear it. But Lisa understands why Grandpa behaves this way, and she understands why people came here. That's why she couldn't stop them when they wanted to leave. However, Allan is not like that. Grandfather ordered to expel him tomorrow otherwise, but suddenly Lisa answered that she does not want to. Kristoff asked again, and she shouted again that she didn't want to. She didn't want to let Allan go. The young woman screams, asking her grandfather why she must always listen to him. This is her institution, not his. It's been less than a month, and Lisa and Allan have little to remember. There is nothing between them, but when she looks at him, she feels something strange. She wants to be with him as long as possible. Lisa doesn't even know why yet. Found a time to throw tantrums. Maybe the granddaughter doesn't understand, but this individual, oh well, so what? And that's why Lisa wants to figure it all out. She doesn't want to live in her grandfather's shadow forever, and she won't. The young woman stopped abruptly, looking at her grandfather's stern face. She apologized for raising her voice and went to the door, but she said that this time she would do as she decided. Kristoff is stunned. He doesn't remember Lisa ever screaming like that. Many years ago, an underground dungeon opened in the city and many people were unable to escape. Jake told the master that something terrible had happened. His son was dead. When Kristoff lost his son and looked at Lisa, who had no one left, he decided that he had to teach her how to stand up for herself. He had to. That's why he was so strict with her. Lisa didn't like fencing, but her grandfather forced her to because she would never become a hunter that way, not to mention reaching Class A. She wanted to take a different path to become a teacher. But Kristoff didn't teach her so that his granddaughter would become some kind of teacher. He shouted that he didn't want to hear about it and demanded that they just do as he said. Kristoff oppressed her all the time, and although he understood that sooner or later she would go against him, he did not want to think about it. And this is how it all ended. Lisa rebelled after all. In the morning, Allan went to the institution like a new student. Another conversation would not be a problem. When the Star Sword attacked him, he thought he was finished, but he got off with only minor bruises. Yes, Kristoff held back. But if Lisa had come even a minute later, everything could have ended much worse. The protagonist couldn't even imagine how she lived. Last night, Lisa called Allan and told him everything. She told me about her relationship with her grandfather. She told him about what happened to her former students. The protagonist is sure that she kept quiet about a lot. But this is enough to understand what she feels and why the Star Sword treated the protagonist this way. And still, it's not a reason to beat someone up. Just because Allan understood it doesn't mean he thinks it's right. I wonder if he'll ever apologize to the protagonist. Allan doubts it. But the experience gained from being beaten with a Star Sword was truly wonderful. The protagonist decided that he would never do it again in his life. Well, it's okay if Kristoff beats him one more time. The progress in the lectures is worth it. Allan looked into the office and said hello. He finally showed up. Star Sword was already sitting on the floor and told him to come in quickly. The man ordered him to sit down. Did he really decide to beat me up again? Well, Allan told him that he and Lisa had an agreement. Kristoff asked if that was all. Tired of being suspected, the protagonist replied that everything was as he had said. He had nothing to hide. It seems he is not lying. But Kristoff does not understand where the individual got such talent and so much power from. He has never seen so much power in an ordinary student. And when he saw how angry Kristoff was, he not only wasn't scared, but even somehow became inspired. Allan said that if a man had nothing else to say, he would go and train just what he needed. Kristoff will watch this bastard train and immediately understand what he is hiding. However, during the protagonist's training, the man is sure of only one thing. This individual is clearly not normal. Will he just keep looking at the switched-off phone? There's nothing there at all. Star Sword thought that Allan was meditating like that. The protagonist replied that it was something like that. Kristoff said that meditation was excellent training. However, you shouldn't overdo it either. The individual should understand that it strengthens his mind and spirit, but not his body. Allan replied, yeah, and continued staring at the screen. What's wrong with him? Is he not interested in what Kristoff is teaching him? No, that can't be. Then the man said that he could teach Allan something if he wanted. The protagonist was surprised that the Star Sword itself decided to take care of him. Ah, just look. He reacted immediately. How could it be otherwise? He hurt Kristoff's pride, so the man blurted out that he would teach him. Well, maybe show him a few tricks. But then Allan suddenly added that it was not necessary. He was happy with everything as it was. And he also asked not to distract him. If he wants to say something, they'll talk later. It's clear that Kristoff is bored, but still. At that moment, Lisa came to the institution. She was very surprised to see her grandfather. He said that she was just in time. The granddaughter asked why her grandfather had come. Lisa immediately demanded that Allan not be touched with a finger. But then Kristoff declared that this scoundrel was clearly not all there. Allan doesn't want the Star Sword to teach him. Kristoff just said to look at what the protagonist was doing. He was completely sick. But Lisa doesn't see anything strange. Allan is always like this. Grandfather is shocked that in her opinion this is normal. She understands him perfectly well. She used to think exactly the same way. Lisa approached Allan and he asked how long she had been there. The young woman said that she had literally just come in. Lisa was wondering how he was feeling and so on. Kristoff doesn't like this individual. He's not very smart, but Lisa smiles so much when she looks at him. Does she really enjoy talking to him? Come to think of it, Kristoff had never seen her smile like that. The man was angry at the little brat. How dare he hit on his granddaughter? Suddenly, Jake burst into the room. He has urgent news for the master. The Order of Truth summons the Star Sword to itself. Kristoff replied that if these weirdos wanted something from him, they should come themselves. However, Jake said that Circalia himself wanted to see the man, and he has one more request for the Star Sword. He wants Kristoff to bring in a man named Allan Jefferson. Everyone is shocked. Kristoff said that the villain is one of them. That's right. Otherwise, how did Kalia know about him? Allan replied that he was interested himself. Lisa remembered that there was a strange man in a black robe at the tournament. Maybe he has something to do with it. Even if he does, it's still a bit odd. It's unlikely that any ordinary person would be interested in Kalia. Lisa asked if Mr. Paul might know this person by chance, but he had no idea. Allan asked if he really had to go because he didn't feel like it. Lisa said indignantly that it was an order of truth. It includes 7 apostles. They stand on par with the heads of the largest states, and the protagonist still asks whether he should go. Kalia is the successor to the Apostle of Chastity. It's not common for people like him to schedule personal meetings. And what does it matter to Allan? Just some foreigner he didn't know. Better to keep training. Jake said that's probably why everyone thought so highly of Sir Kalia. Sir knew in advance that Allan would refuse his offer. He asked to convey something in that case. If the protagonist still agreed to come, he would give Allan 100 million. The protagonist was stunned. How did Kalia know that he needed exactly that much? The Order of Truth is a religious organization, but it does not serve human gods. Their god is truth, and at its head are the 7 apostles. That mysterious man in the robe is the great voice. They convey the will of God. That is the truth. A century ago, the Order of Truth was considered a simple cult, but when the cataclysm happened, they joined forces with the forces of the heroes. It was largely thanks to them that peace was restored on Earth. And so the number of followers of the Order grew significantly. But more importantly, the giant berserker monster was destroyed by the Order. When everyone thought that the disaster had passed, the monster suddenly appeared. He was so strong that even all the heroes put together could not cope with him. The situation was so desperate that it was nicknamed the Second Cataclysm, and only the Great Voice and the 7 Apostles were able to cope with it. And so the Earth was saved. Let's return to the present day to some hotel on the outskirts of Seoul. Allan thought it was too nondescript a place for a representative of a world religion. Christoph told the individual that he came to Kalia, and this swindler next to him is Allan. The individual in the robe led them out. Sir Kalia is already waiting. If Lisa was right and someone from the Order was actually at the tournament, perhaps they decided to lure him with the same amount he could get for winning. Or he chose her for the boom. But Allan can't figure out why he was watching him and why he called him. Does he know something about the protagonist? Or maybe about the Academy of Transcendence? We need to find out. The individual led the heroes into a spacious room and told them to wait a bit. Sir Kalia would be here soon. Christoph knew it would be like this. Kalia wouldn't sit and wait for them. Allan asked if the Star Sword was familiar with him. Christoph replied that today was their first meeting. The protagonist was surprised, but that couldn't be it. He thought that the Star Sword was quite close to him. Christoph said that Kalia had called him a couple of times, but he had never seen him in person. During the cataclysm, the Star Sword met the Apostle of Chastity, but has not yet met his successor. Christoph is one of the heroes who saved the world. For Allan, he is more like Lisa's grandfather, but he is still a Star Sword. Don't forget about that. The protagonist asked, "What about the Great Voice?" The man had heard that it had only appeared in public once during the fight with the berserker, so Christoph hadn't met him before. Star Sword replied that no, he only saw it from afar. At this moment, Sir Kalia entered the room. He was glad that the guests had come. This is the first time they've met in person. Christoph said that Sir himself invited them here, and in the end made them wait. Kalia replied that he needed time to cleanse his body and mind before preaching the word of God. Christoph had never heard such nonsense. The individual said he was late in introducing himself. His name is Kalia. He is from the Order of Truth, preaching the word of God and walking the path of chastity. Allan said that he was very pleased and began to introduce himself, but Kalia knows his name. Sir thanked the protagonist for coming here. Allan asked how Kalia knew him. It looks like they need to clear up some misunderstandings before moving on to the main topic. Allan recently took part in an academic competition. At that time, one of the believers of the Order of Truth was watching him. He praised Allan so much that Kalia himself wanted to know how strong he was. The protagonist was surprised that this was all. But why did the apostle's successor want to see him? Not for this simple reason. Kalia just wanted to talk about it and sat down on a chair. Hopes to cooperate with Mr. Star Sword to explore the dungeons. Christoph, shocked, asked why him. Kalia replied that the man knew better than anyone that this was far from the end. There's a report of a distortion in one of the dungeons in Korea. Kalia thinks the Star Sword knows about it better than she does. Christoph wanted to stop this nonsense, but this is the decision of the Order of Truth. It is necessary to check the condition of the dungeon. This is why Kalia flew to Korea, because this way he will be able to strengthen his position. As the individual thought the Star Sword can't be fooled, it was impudent of him to say that this was the decision of the Truth Order. It wasn't even funny. Kalia asks if he can help him. Depends on what he is willing to give. It seems Kristoff does not want to do a favor. Kalia doesn't think the Star Sword is missing anything, but he heard that his granddaughter founded a hunter institution, and they from the side of the Order of Truth can do something. The room was filled with Kristoff's deadly aura. Allan's body went numb. This was the true form of the Star Sword's killing intent. He said that if Kalia tried to involve Lisa here, even once more, he would not leave her alive. Kalia said that he had made a mistake and asked for forgiveness. However, other than that, he had nothing else to offer the Star Sword. Then the individual suggested doing it this way. He, just like Kristoff, would fulfill one of his requests. Star Sword replied that this was ridiculous. Kalia could say tomorrow that there was no deal. Why should he believe him? If Kristoff wants, the boy can swear an oath in the name of the Order of Truth. But is that enough to determine the place of the Apostle? No matter what the man thought after this, Kalia would not be able to claim that there was no deal between them. And so the Star Sword agreed. Kalia performed the oath ceremony of the Order of Truth. Next, Allan. The Apostle will say directly they want to sponsor him in the Order of Truth. But the Protagonist said that he already belongs to one institution. However, that is not what Kalia had in mind. They want to sponsor his various activities that the institution cannot take care of. For this, the warrant does not require anything in return. It is enough that Allan and the Truth warrant were close, and if he refuses, then nothing can be done about it. It can't be that they don't want anything for it. They will still want to get paid for their services. To be honest, Allan is not attracted to this offer. But if Kalia answers one of his questions honestly, he will think about it. The Protagonist was about to ask a question, but then he wondered if the Apostle would really answer honestly. If Kalia turns away or avoids answering, then Allan will never know again. It would be suspicious if the Protagonist asked about this directly. Then he pulled his phone out of his pocket, held it up to Kalia's face, and asked if he saw anything. Buddha's lecture on the phone. Some say that the essence of existence is the soul. If you believe these words, then it is the soul that determines who you are, not your body. And so Allan once again asked the lost Kalia what he saw on the screen of this phone. The Apostle said that the Protagonist asks very strange questions. Allan doesn't think it's hard to answer. However, for Kalia, the question is too difficult. The Protagonist can't do anything if he doesn't want to answer. And then Kalia said that he saw only a black screen and asked if Allan was satisfied with this answer. Quite satisfied. Then the Apostle suggested that he think again about getting sponsorship, and then Allan refused with a smile. After the meeting, the individual in the robe, Kalkos, came to Kalia and said that no distortions were found. The Apostle was surprised, but Kalos swore in the name of the Order of Truth. He was completely sure of it. To be honest, there was nothing special about Allan. Even if he was special, he was just a student. The question of what Kalia had seen on his smartphone caught him off guard. But what was this nagging feeling that remained in his chest? Kalos wanted to report to the other Apostle, but Kalia said to just observe for now. The distortion in the dungeon is their priority right now. Kalia asked what happened to the other heroes except for the Soul Blade and Dark Sword. Kalos called everyone. As far as Kalia knows, no one has seen these two. Already in the evening, Kristoff asked why Allan had refused the offer. The Protagonist replied that everything was too suspicious. Allan doesn't know what a truth order is. At least Kalia is clearly not affiliated with the Transcendent Institution. He doesn't want to make a practically free deal with suspicious characters. Allan asked Kristoff to explain what the term dungeon distortion meant. It meant that magic was distorted. The magic wave inside the dungeon is distorted, so its difficulty is different from the value measured when the dungeon was formed. These distortions have many side effects, but the main one is a sudden increase in the difficulty of the dungeon. Or the most common case, dungeons break through before their appointed time. You won't see that now, but during the Cataclysm, this happened very often. So, What Kalia meant by "it's not the end yet" means Kristoff told Allan not to worry because she was simply mistaken since the cataclysm had long since ended. The protagonist asked where the man was going since Lisa's institution was on this side. Kristoff replied that he didn't need to know. He also added that if Allan tries to do any strange things to Lisa, he won't live, so he recognized the protagonist. Kristoff replied that he was watching the protagonist. Allan said, to be honest, "Isn't that why Lisa is distancing herself from him?" "Oh, looks like he's going to hit again." The protagonist quickly ran away. However, Kristoff thought that this slacker was right. Allan came to the institution and said that he had to become stronger quickly to resist him. Lisa asked about her grandfather. They had gone together. The protagonist said that Kristoff had gone with him, but then changed his mind and went the other way. The young woman doesn't have to worry. Her grandfather didn't say anything like that. Lisa said that he had a very bad character and asked for forgiveness. She should have said so earlier. The way the Star Sword expresses itself is certainly wrong, but Allan can't say there's anything wrong with it. He can change right now. The protagonist will only get a few hits if he does something terrible. Of course, this won't end well. Allan blushed. What was he even talking about? Lisa smiled and thanked him, and then there was an awkward pause. By the way, the protagonist said that he needed money. Allan shouted about it every day. It's impossible not to know. However, he doesn't remember when he told her that. If you think about it, money is the most important issue for him now. All the millions he got from Kalia went to pay off debts. Allan doesn't have money to renew his subscription, needs to buy a weapon, and also wants to attend individual lectures. During his absence, Lisa discovered an ideal assignment for him, a dungeon elimination tournament. Victory would bring $300,000 in winnings. When Allan inquired about the details, it appeared to be some sort of underground exploration contest that nobody else could manage. These were presumably unprofitable labyrinths. Indeed, if those who awakened during the catastrophe possessed any sense of duty toward their nation or beliefs, contemporary professional adventurers focus solely on monetary gain. Lisa explained that financially worthless and deserted dungeons tend to be lower ranked, yet more challenging to assault. Without swift dungeon clearance, they eventually detonate, unleashing creatures into the world. Consequently, regardless of how weak the monsters might be, they remain dangerous to civilization. Initially, government-sponsored adventurers supervised such locations, but deploying them to these questionable areas proved inefficient. Eventually, the authorities resolved this issue through alternative means, by establishing a dungeon clearance tournament. These underground chambers match perfectly with what even ordinary academy students can handle. Moreover, the students' current capabilities far exceed requirements, and the outcomes will influence the Hunter Academy's overall standings. The reward stands at $300,000. Additionally, one can advance lecture completion through raid progression. The protagonist doesn't know who devised this system, but they're brilliant. Lisa believes he can triumph without difficulty. Allan sees no reason to decline, so he instructed Lisa to submit his application. He understands her deepest desires. She was probably researching methods to improve the Academy's reputation when she encountered this competition. Given the caliber of opponents from previous contests, one can predict the challenge ahead won't be simple. However, this time Allan will certainly claim the prize money. Incidentally, he inquired about the tournament's exact format. Lisa mentioned it spans 7 days. Following commencement, officials will distribute dungeon lists to contestants. Participants then review the options and reserve their preferred dungeon via the application. Each dungeon must be completed within 10 hours, with only one reservation permitted. In emergency situations, bookings are automatically cancelled. Simply put, victory belongs to whoever clears the greatest number of dungeons in the shortest time. Velocity equals survival. It's no coincidence that petroleum costs escalate daily. Yet Allan remarked on the difficulty. Post-raid cleanup requires disposing of monster remains. However, if execution speed takes priority, Lisa noted that corpse removal isn't mandatory. They yield minimal profit anyway. She was then astonished to realize the hero intended to collect them personally once again. Gathering everything would generate substantial income. Why discard such valuable resources? Lisa protested that victory mattered more. Allan acknowledged this would complicate things. If only the priorities differed. He then pondered something before asking about the regulations. Several days later, competition day arrived. Lecture advancement had increased through diligent effort. However, Chiron and Merlin's course progress mysteriously stagnated. Considering that every 10% reveals certain developments, additional requirements seem necessary. Lisa asked whether Allan had installed the application. He had completed all essential preparations the previous day. His companion still hadn't appeared. Perhaps he couldn't locate the venue. Allan insisted he navigates expertly. This isn't mere boasting. If pathfinding were a talent, even the stellar blade couldn't match his abilities. Despite his looks, he possesses great appeal. Eventually, the assistant showed up. Allan gestured that he'd arrived. The person turned out to be Michael. The man questions why the hero is calling out when he's not at his residence. Allan expected Michael's tardiness, but he came earlier than anticipated. The fellow had already informed the hero about his punctuality. He knows the consequences of arriving late. Michael asked what tasks needed completion. Several days earlier, Allan had contacted him with a team collaboration proposal. He wanted Michael to transport monster carcasses remaining after the competition and serve as a driver. The hero would compensate him appropriately afterward. More precisely, Allan would handle the carrying while Michael performed the butchering, since every moment counts there. Even though the remains aren't particularly valuable, they could generate decent profits. The proposition seemed reasonable, but Michael wondered if they could both manage when speed was so crucial. If the hero worries about him unnecessarily, it's not required. Allan genuinely needs Michael's assistance. Processing carcasses for money demands expertise. With Michael's help, success is guaranteed. Thus, the dungeon clearing competition commences. The pair would begin then and meet with Lisa later. Allan explained the regulations to Michael, who confirmed he understood everything. The duo entered the vehicle. The man knows victory belongs to whoever clears the most dungeons. In essence, success depends on velocity. Two elements are essential in this competition. First is clearing dungeons as rapidly as possible. Second is reaching dungeons as swiftly as possible. Essentially, all dungeons are level 1 or 2, varying by grade. Raid duration will also fluctuate, but Allan is prepared for any dungeon type. Michael's current responsibility is reaching dungeons with maximum speed. Allan presented him with a dungeon list and their coordinates. The hero asked if Michael could devise a route minimizing travel time between locations. Certainly, he confirmed. A person surpasses navigation systems in both speed and precision. Michael then instructed him to hold tight and floored the accelerator. Inspector Chloe Lynn yawned from boredom. The individual who had just entered the dungeon was Allan Jefferson from Dream Academy. Chloe was unaware such an academy existed. Being from an obscure institution, he must be a mediocre student. The inspector estimates Allan will finish within an hour, and another person accompanies him. Initially, Chloe suspected cheating, but Michael simply waited outside. No violations occurred. He appears to be an ordinary driver. The gateway suddenly opened. Allan emerged and told his partner he had finished. Please prepare for departure. His speed was remarkable. Michael hadn't even finished his coffee. Chloe shouted about regulations prohibiting external interference with dungeon raids. Allan acknowledged this, but pointed out the raid had concluded. He had completely cleared the dungeon. The hero suggested Chloe inspect the interior for verification. She protested this impossibility, but was shocked to discover monster corpses throughout. Less than 10 minutes had elapsed. Chloe observed the hero dragging carcasses and questioned his actions. Allan said to ignore his activities and departed hastily. The inspector thought he was deranged. Michael noted the hero's continued obsession with this madness. Allan cannot abandon objectives regardless of circumstances. Beyond primary goals, secondary ones exist. The hero asked about the time requirement. As Allan predicted, the monsters are low-level with few profitable components, so processing one carcass takes 15 seconds. As expected from Michael, the fellow can begin while Allan handles transportation. Chloe asked incredulously if they truly intended to butcher the corpses. The hero questioned whether this posed problems. The inspector mumbled about having no issues, but then wondered about complaints. The pair commenced their work. Another dungeon exists in this vicinity, not immediately adjacent but closer than alternatives. The duo entered the truck and departed. Chloe couldn't comprehend what she had witnessed. Another inspector was relaxing near the park. It was pleasant to unwind after a lengthy day of computer work. He wondered when participants who reserved this dungeon would arrive. Then Allan and Michael literally burst onto the scene. The hero immediately rushed through the portal and began swiftly eliminating monsters. Minutes later, he provided Michael with the next batch. These skeletons contain abundant bone marrow. Processing required additional minutes. The pair loaded up and sped away. Let's visit the Dungeon Management Division at the Ministry of Public Administration and Security. Deputy Kim completed today's competition report and placed it on the desk. The director began careful examination. Sheila Park from Academy East cleared 16 dungeons. Quite impressive. He thought such numbers would certainly secure first place. However, he was surprised to see Sheila ranked only second. First place belongs to Allan, who cleared double that amount. The director summoned Deputy Kim and asked if he had made reporting errors. First place cleared 32 dungeons, which seems impossible to accomplish in a single day. The deputy said he initially doubted this too, but after consulting everyone, the information proved accurate. The two individuals moved between dungeons with extreme efficiency, wasting no time. Furthermore, according to inspectors, raids lasted no more than 10 minutes. The director responded that even if these dungeons were level 1 or 2, students would still require at least 30 minutes, excluding travel and rest periods. The deputy had initially verified no one assisted Allan, but no regulations were violated. The assistant informed the director that the participant attended Dream Academy, located near Seoul in the Unyongu district. The director inquired if this was the academy established by the Star Sword's granddaughter. Precisely. And the deputy wondered where he had heard this name before. That explains everything. They decided to investigate whether the Star Sword interfered with the raids. The manager informed Sheila she wasn't in first place. Her apology wouldn't suffice. Academy Vosto would suffer significant losses without securing first place this time. Sheila vowed to do everything possible. The director then asked if she believed someone could clear 32 dungeons, while completing raids every 10 minutes. Even considering dungeon distances, it's impossible. The director suspects outside assistance is involved. He instructed Sheila to continue her current approach while he handled the rest. His father's reaction, former A-level hunter and current academy director Liam Park, suggests he plans to pursue deceptive methods. He told his daughter not to worry. After all, survival of the smartest is life's law. Victory matters, not righteousness. Liam asked if Sheila was concerned about that individual. Father doubts she'll act as foolishly as that idiot Mark. Sheila promised not to disappoint and left the office. Mark had told her that professional hunters must possess something in their hearts they never compromise. The girl then considered this nonsense. No one else in the world thinks similarly. Money determines everything. Mark laughed, saying that when hearts are eclipsed, the world appears different. He declared he would become a professional hunter who makes people's hearts tremble. Sheila then smirked and requested no one else hear this. If people ridiculed this, even she would feel deeply embarrassed. Mark asked in amazement if Sheila ever experienced shame, and now she sees him again before her. Sheila said since he was deceased, he should leave her be. Meanwhile, the workday concluded. Michael's entire body ached. He asked if the following week would resemble this. Death wasn't far away, and apparently he enjoys pretending too. Michael indignantly questioned if Allan had ever operated a vehicle while improvising routes. Yes, he's correct. But when considering money, pain disappears naturally. Today, excluding expenses and taxes, the hero earned approximately $6,000. Splitting it equally would yield about $3,000 each. Michael objected. 30% would satisfy him. Allan takes 60%. After all, he performed all the labor. For Michael, a mere driver, 30% suffices. The hero began arguing that the man's work was somewhat more significant. Eventually, Allan conceded, 30% equals roughly 1,800, but since that's not an attractive figure, he asked to simply take 2,000. The hero insists that without Michael, such profits would be unthinkable. Allan then asked in surprise if the man wasn't amazed at all. Michael thought he meant the money. But no, the hero referred to how rapidly he cleared the dungeons. The man mentioned he had already observed Allan at academic competitions. Allan exclaimed in shock that Michael could have at least called to announce his attendance. The man didn't want to impose. Regardless, it's pleasant. Uncle Michael is a fine person. He's straightforward but always encouraging. After losing his parents, Allan had to settle debts independently, and the man cared for him, providing tremendous support. The hero suggested Michael establish a transportation business. He thinks operating a private enterprise would be excellent. The competition's second day arrived. Inspectors had heard about those dungeon crawlers. Michael asked what this nonsense meant. And they earned this nickname because besides raids, they managed corpse processing. Actually, much is said about heroes. Initially, when the inspector first heard this, he didn't believe it. But witnessing them firsthand convinced him there were no issues. Currently, Sheila has cleared 36 dungeons, while our hero has cleared 73. At this pace, victory is approaching. Michael said if they don't win, it would be bizarre at minimum. How grateful the hero is that he was the one who requested help. Allan said cheerfully, 5 days remain. It seems he won't let Michael rest, even unto death. If they win, Allan will treat them to something delicious. He mentioned bringing Myla, Michael's daughter. He hasn't seen her in ages. The uncle said the hero would need to purchase an entire cow. Allan only thinks that now he absolutely must win. It was the third day. Michael was examining something on his phone. Allan noticed this, and his uncle told him to look. The hero was simply horrified. No available dungeons remained in the vicinity. Only reservations adjacent to Allan's were booked. This doesn't appear coincidental. Michael also finds it suspicious. It violates regulations, so he thinks the reservations will be removed soon. His instincts suggested this wasn't accidental. Allan replied they weren't certain yet, and proposed reaching the nearest dungeon first. But after the subsequent dungeon, the identical situation occurred. Consequently, the pair managed only 10 raids. They returned to the academy and reported very strange happenings. But Michael doesn't understand what's strange. Sheila is second. He's confident this was her doing. Lisa said the application allows viewing who reserved dungeons, but not these particular ones. She will contact the organizer. Allan holds first place, though it's only the third day. If the same pattern continues constantly, he will lose. The hero apologized to Michael, but he thinks corpse processing isn't that critical. Now the man understands that victory is far more important. Still, regardless of how quickly Allan clears dungeons, travel distance is unavoidable. Michael will attempt to plan routes as precisely as possible. Allan is seriously contemplating something. Then he announced he had a strategy. Liam Park has assembled a group of hunters. It's beneficial that they communicate this way, naturally, but vigilance is necessary. Once someone named Allan reserves a dungeon, they must book all nearby dungeons. But one person asked how Allan would conduct raids then. Another person rebuked him, saying it didn't matter. The main thing was receiving payment. Liam stood on the platform and instructed everyone to prepare. Our hero had reserved the dungeon. Like yesterday, all dungeons within an hour's travel were being booked. But booking everything simultaneously would be suspicious. So gradually, over 10 minutes while Allan raids, the hunters were discussing their wages when they suddenly fell silent. They began running around in panic, asking what to do now. Allan reserved a dungeon directly next to Sheila. Liam grabbed one of the men's phones to examine. If the group booked the dungeon, it would affect her, too. It would be possible to cancel the reservation once she completed the raid, but regulations state you can't cancel reservations within 10 hours unless you finish the raid. Liam's hands trembled when he saw this. Then he hurled the phone away. Meanwhile, Sheila was actively clearing her dungeon. When she finished, she sat beside the driver and told him to proceed to the next one. The man was surprised because not even 15 minutes had passed. He sat there puzzled when suddenly Sheila asked why he wasn't moving. The driver replied that actually all surrounding dungeons were reserved, so he didn't know where to go now. Fortunate. At first, Allan thought it was mere coincidence, but it proved otherwise. Reserved next to Sheila. He will also lose considerably because of this, but now the standings will be stable. Liam knew his daughter would notice, but he didn't expect her to react like that. He said not to worry. He had already devised another method so Sheila could continue in the same manner. On the competition's 5th day, Sheila and Allan encountered each other. Michael said from a distance that was her. The hero is confused, and the uncle says that's their companion in misfortune. The inspector tells both of them that quarrels between participants are prohibited. Rule violations will result in disqualification. Allan said they weren't fighting. They simply had nearby dungeons. So Sheila and our hero met personally. Allan said whoever won, everything should be fair. Even though this is a competition, didn't it begin with noble intentions? Listening to him, one can conclude that Sheila isn't playing fairly. The hero said that wasn't his meaning and departed. Noble intentions, she hears for the first time. Ridiculous. Such a concept doesn't exist in this world. People are inherently selfish. Whatever they do, their actions stem from personal interest. They help if it benefits them, then abandon others. There's no place for noble intentions in this cycle. Sheila entered the dungeon to face the monsters and said they needed swift elimination. When she emerged, she heard the inspector's enthusiastic words about hearing rumors. But when she witnessed it personally, she realized it was simply unimaginable. Allan and Michael cut and dragged monsters without pause. The hero paused and asked if she had finished yet. Sheila was faster than he thought. Also, if she didn't need the corpses, he requested to take them. Sheila said to do whatever they wanted. Allan grabbed several carcasses and began doing exercises. Sheila asked what he was doing. The hero laughed and asked again if she was referring to exercise or corpses. Well, Allan replied that they bring substantial money. Sheila snorted, called it a waste of time, and walked away. As she thought, there was no room for noble intentions in this world, as well as hunters with noble intentions. The time has come when anyone can become a professional hunter. Over time, it became an ordinary profession. Let's move away from Allan briefly. Kalia seemed to say this is a level 6 dungeon, but for some reason the monsters here are level 10. The apostle replied that when measured it was definitely level 6. Perhaps the fool appeared here due to distortions. Christoph replied that distortion couldn't have occurred in such a manner. She believed more that it was the Truth Order's work, as it had been 30 years ago. Kalia understands his concerns completely, but the Truth Order's honor swears they didn't do it. They're all insane there. Suddenly, Luna, the Star Demon's apprentice, demanded they not start fighting in her presence. She would also investigate this phenomenon. Christoph asked what all the commotion was about and where the Star Demon was. Luna answered her grandfather that he himself knew the master wasn't in good health. She definitely senses abnormal mana flow, but it doesn't seem like distortion. Luna asked if anything strange happened during the cleanup. Christoph replied that no, it was only a level 10 monster. He was simply unlucky then. He never said it couldn't be distortion. It's hard to admit, but it's true. It hasn't happened since the Berserker. Kalia asked what would happen if the same thing occurred to other dungeons. Luna replied that although the chance was low, it still couldn't be ignored. In any case, they had to gather more information. Luna will ask the association leader to remeasure all low-ranking dungeons. Meanwhile, the inspector observed something strange. It's rare, but the man had witnessed quite a few cases where two dungeons were connected. However, this is the first time he sees three dungeons in one location. Many hunters simply approached the portals and then left because they confused their reservations. One after another, they foolishly said that something was wrong with them today, that they were making errors everywhere. Michael at Lisa's academy screamed that they were all completely insane. Wherever the kids went, they were everywhere. Are these damn inspectors corrupt? Since their previous method doesn't work anymore, they found another way to hinder the hero. This won't work anymore. Lisa will rebel even if she has to use her grandfather's name. They wrote a letter that if another member raids a reserved dungeon without permission, at the inspector's discretion, the reservation owner may be awarded points as compensation. The past can no longer be returned, but there are still a couple of days left until the competition's end. Now everything should have proceeded smoothly. But directly in front of the guy's truck, the car accidentally stalled. The man didn't know what to do. He stopped so abruptly. He suggested Allan go to the hospital first. He started apologizing for being distracted by his phone, which is why he missed the traffic light. And when the heroes asked him to move the car, he couldn't locate the keys. In the end, thanks to fraud, Sheila became first. All the inspectors insist they have nothing to do with her. The head of dungeon management promised to address the matter directly, but Michael shouted that it would be too late then. Damn him. Yes, that's right. Lisa recently learned that Sheila's father, Liam Park, is the principal of the academy she attends. He is a former A-rank hunter, one of the few people who acknowledge the Star Sword. Is it really that strong? Lisa said no. But Liam is a talker, so he has connections here and there, so she's afraid that the investigation won't be possible. Even if his involvement in the case were to be revealed, it would be too late. Although, if Grandpa had intervened, everything would have been resolved quickly. Allan doesn't think the Star Sword will agree to this. Lisa thinks so too, but she can't even contact him now. She apologized to the hero for not being able to help. Allan asked him not to say that since Lisa had been helping them all this time. She supported and stood up for him. If it weren't for her, everything would have been much worse. Michael agreed. She did everything she could. The rest depends on them, or rather on Allan. He sees how worried Lisa was. Michael tells the grinning hero to reveal what's on his mind. I'm sure he's already got something planned. Liam slammed the table. They were overtaken again. The subordinate thinks Allan only books a dungeon when he's already nearby, so it was impossible to predict where he would go next. Liam shouted that they should stop him by any means necessary then, but it only took Allan 5 minutes to book and clear the dungeon. Liam demands to bribe the inspectors. They are ready to do anything for money. However, Lisa interfered and the academy complained about them, so they appointed people from dungeon management. Liam can't believe the governing board came just because of a complaint from the academy. What kind of academy is this? And who is this hunter? The subordinate may be wrong, but there are rumors that the academy was founded by the granddaughter of the Star Sword. The guy can't do anything now. Then Liam demanded to find another way. This time, the Vasto Academy must win. If they lose, all subordinates must be prepared to face the consequences. Allan and Sheila cleared dungeons one after another. The difference in their points was minimal. They were almost equal. The competition organizer's office shouts that there can be no tie. Lisa shouts that a participant who commits various types of cheating cannot win. She is asked to watch her language and not go too far by saying that Liam caused the accident. Then Lisa asked how it was that accidents only happened to them. Would Liam think it was a coincidence? He then demanded proof. The head of the commission asked the two of them to calm down. First of all, they came to the conclusion that there could be no tie. Furthermore, since there is no hard evidence that Sheila cheated, disqualification is not possible. Therefore, the committee has one proposal. The head of the dungeon management team, Stephen, met the participants. Our participants, Allan and Sheila. Once everyone has arrived, he will explain how the final round will proceed, after which the winner will be determined. The rules are simple. The participants can choose one of 3 dungeons and proceed to the second after completing the raid of the first. The winner is the one who clears 2 dungeons. But Allan asked what the point of raiding the second dungeon is if the winner is essentially the one who clears the first one faster. Good question. At first, the commission wanted to do this, but they couldn't find a suitable place where the 2 dungeons would be connected. That's why they chose this. But Stephen can't leave these dungeons unattended. Anyway, shouldn't the winner have more dungeons cleared than second place? All 3 dungeons have 2 stars of difficulty. There is no difference, so the participants can discuss which dungeon they want to go to among themselves. Allan doubts that Sheila has set something up this time either, so he asks if he can choose first. She said to do as she wants, then the hero will go to the right. Before entering the portal, Sheila told Allan just not to cry later. The hero didn't have time to answer as Stephen told the participants to get ready and begin. Allan wondered what she meant. Oh, well, it doesn't matter. Victory is much more important now. The hero ran forward. Allan thought there would be ordinary kobolds here, but aside from them, he doesn't even hear a single sound. No, it's somehow strange. 5 minutes have already passed, but he hasn't encountered anyone yet. Suddenly, Allan heard a terrible scream that definitely did not belong to a kobold. A huge manticore suddenly came out at him. But what is a level 4 monster doing here? Maybe there was an error in measuring the dungeon. Allan, without further ado, pierced the monster with his spear. Although the hero dealt with the manticore quickly, it took a very long time. Sheila has most likely already carried out the raid, maybe even finishing the second raid. Allan ran out of the portal in panic. He shouted that there was a 4th-level manticore in that dungeon. Stephen asked in surprise if Allan really meant to say that he had dealt with the manticore single-handedly. The hero shouted that it was unfair and he demanded a rematch. Stephen thoughtfully replied that he fully understood his request, but it will be difficult to cancel the competition right now, and all because the participant Sheila has not yet come out. It seems strange. If there really were kobolds inside, then what was she doing there for 10 minutes? When Mark got hurt, Sheila was treating the wound. He screamed that her hands were just merciless. Would she really go over to the monster's side when she became a professional hunter? She told him to stop this idle chatter. And by the way, she asked him why he didn't listen to his father. Mark finds it terrible to lie for his own benefit. He doesn't want to do that, even if he has to go against his father's words. Mark told Sheila that if she was a professional hunter, there had to be something in her heart that she could never compromise. There it is again. Not funny anymore. Sheila screamed that people had already called her brother a reckless fool. What if it makes things worse? In this world, all the problems come from kindness. Sheila told her brother not to jump over his head when he can't even take care of himself. Let him wake up. This is the age of professional hunters. The era of heroes is over, or they are dead. They are gone. But Mark only answered with a smile that there are. There are as many of them as there are honest and incorruptible politicians. No matter who Sheila was crucifying herself to, communicating with her brother is comparable to a dialogue with a stone. It was hard to believe then, but Mark knew that the day would come when they could meet again. He is a man who does not care about any benefit, and he acts without thinking, all for the sake of becoming only her hero. Mark died in a terrible tragedy. Sheila, in tears, thought that her brother was the most reckless fool in this world. Liam knew he was stupid, of course, but to defend some stranger. The father hoped that at least his daughter would not be disappointed. Mark died trying to help others, not knowing his place. A reckless fool indeed. Sheila promised her father. She told herself that she was not like her brother and would never be. We'll return to our time. It's strange. Sheila seemed to have come in 10 minutes ago, but hasn't come out yet. Yes, Stephen said that the contestant was still inside the dungeon. Allan won even under these circumstances. The inspector asks if the hero still wants a rematch. The commission has no right to refuse him. So if he wants, Allan has only 1 dungeon left and his prize. No, something clearly doesn't add up here. The hero was sure that the measurement error of the dungeon was not just an accident, but another trick of Sheila. Then why is it like this? Deputy Kim came running in a panic. The manometer is acting strangely. It was just showing 3 stars and now it's suddenly showing 4. Allan is stunned. Star Sword recently talked about the dungeon distortion. There are many side effects, but mainly it's a sudden increase in difficulty. Deputy Kim said the machine had never failed. In their 20-year career, this was the first time they had seen a malfunction. Just in case they should call in professional hunters to investigate. Stephen told that they had identified the error and he could continue the competition later. However, before they knew it, our hero had disappeared. Allan ran into that very same faulty, dangerous dungeon. Sheila sat against the wall, bleeding. Above her is Near, the monster of 6 stars. Could this be the poetic justice my brother spoke of? Nora growled, and Sheila nervously whispered that this couldn't be. There is no place for justice in the world. It only happens in fairy tales. Well, at least Sheila won't die a stupid death like her brother. She's already resigned to her death. Suddenly, the roar stopped. Allan blocked the monster. He asked in a trembling voice if the girl could move. The hero shouted for her to get out of here quickly. Time was running out. Sheila screamed, asking what he was doing here then. As Allan thought, it's a 6-star monster. You just need to attack it non-stop. The hero turned the goat's head's attention to himself, and then he began to strike multiple times with his spear. Just one hit, and Allan was dead. Nevertheless, Nakura's attack patterns had become predictable to him. Should he persist in inflicting such wounds, then, before Allan could turn around, the creature impaled his shoulder blade with its razor-sharp horn. The champion crashed against the stone barrier, yet refused to surrender. Allan remarked that Nair possessed greater speed than anticipated. The battle appeared destined to continue indefinitely. He inquired whether Sheila remained hampered in her mobility. She questioned his motivations for this rescue. He bellowed, demanding to know his reasons for coming to her aid. What gain could he possibly derive? Yet Allan remained indifferent to such concerns. He might have simply conquered the final dungeon and claimed victory. Sheila wasn't mistaken in her assessment, was she? Allan had indeed arrived seeking monetary reward. She spoke truthfully. The promise of substantial payment had drawn him here. Then Sheila cried out for him to emerge victorious. She was aware of all his past deeds. Did he expect gratitude for this salvation? Allan declared, absolutely not. Her actions were undeniably reprehensible. He harbored no intention of pardoning her misdeeds, yet he believed this wasn't grounds for Sheila's death. Mark's wisdom echoed in his mind. Though difficult to accept presently, the time would surely arrive when they could reunite. Allan also rejected the notion that this justified abandoning her. Mark had always proclaimed him someone who disregarded personal benefit, acting impulsively to become her champion. Allan then proclaimed that he pursued this course because no treasure on earth surpassed the value of preserving life. Following this declaration, the champion had to engage the beast once more. Instinct forms part of rational thought. Many pupils fail to grasp these words' significance. Mental faculties refer to situational evaluation. Chiron had previously dismissed this as pointless. Indeed, analyzing circumstances leaves insufficient time for decisive action. However, most misinterpreted this concept and chose to abandon assessment and contemplation. Chiron addressed this fundamental error initially. Instinct represents rational thinking's component. One must unite logic with emotion. Situational awareness emerges from merging reason with sentiment. This constitutes authentic transcendental perception. Allan could now perceive the creature's assault patterns. He sensed each muscular contraction. Maintaining this pace, the champion could endure until professional hunters arrived. The inspector had likely summoned them already, so rescue should come promptly. Yet one concern lingered. How long could Sheila survive? Her physical state was clearly deteriorating. Allan couldn't afford to remain passive. The moment for offensive action had come. The force capable of uprooting mountains. The soul that could revolutionize existence. Allan sensed intuitively that his spear alone wouldn't secure victory. Therefore, he channeled his aura. Tremendous bellowing and roaring echoed through the dungeon. Crimson liquid splattered everywhere. Amidst this chaos stood Allan, having bisected Nura completely. Sheila couldn't comprehend what she witnessed. Allan lifted her onto his shoulders and they proceeded toward the exit. He wondered if embarrassment might kill him while assisting her. The champion prayed she hadn't perished. His struggle mustn't prove futile. Sheila whispered weakly that death hadn't claimed her, and Allan exhaled with relief. Time was critical. They needed immediate departure. Upon seeing their condition, Michael began questioning the underground events. Allan would clarify everything later, but emergency medical assistance was paramount. Someone clearly required urgent care. Sheila murmured that she didn't view Allan as her savior. She maintained he'd committed an error. His thoughts were irrelevant. The champion hadn't intended her rescue. Medical personnel shrieked in alarm and quickly loaded the injured into ambulances. Once news of the dungeon clearing competition emerged, public outcry erupted. The appearance of a 6-star creature in a second-tier dungeon wasn't a calibration mistake. Never before had such extreme-level disparities occurred. Not merely civilians showed interest, but organizations and governmental bodies expressed equal astonishment. Allan emerged as the newest celebrity. The prodigy who vanquished Nura and the prestigious academy became sensational phenomena. Kay received word that the abstinence apostle sought his presence. This likely concerned the disturbances occurring throughout Korea. Luna presented Kristoff with her device. She asked whether the individual who defeated the corrupted beast truly attended Lisa Academy. Regarding that repulsive creature, the answer was affirmative. Allan mourned within the medical facility. Michael expressed shock at his sole concern for monetary gain. Naturally, he could celebrate. Victory was his. Why then did organizers declare a tie? Had they overreached by splitting the prize equally? Michael instructed them to cease their nonsense and provided nourishment. Allan couldn't understand why they hadn't decided through rock, paper, scissors. Perhaps through traditional hand games with both participants. Yet, as Michael knew, Sheila had lost her left appendage. Allan had anticipated this outcome. His obsession with wealth had stripped away his compassion. Heavens, what motivated her rescue then? Lisa suddenly entered the chamber. She inquired frantically about Allan's distress. Michael advised against worry. His tears stemmed from the draw result. But why did they determine prize division? Their champion was victorious. Lisa explained that Sheila personally declined the award, revealing all competition manipulations conducted during the event, and accused her father, Vosto Academy's director, of orchestrating these schemes. Legal proceedings commenced and Liam faced detention. Allan couldn't comprehend this development. Sheila's actions seemed incomprehensible. Why this sudden change? However, Lisa brought different news, conveying Sheila's message to the champion. She continued believing Allan's actions were misguided, yet she acknowledged her own culpability in these events. Lisa couldn't decipher this meaning. Regardless, Allan would receive his complete prize. Additionally, the government accepted responsibility for these incidents and extended benefits. The most significant included tax exemption on prize money plus a 100 million bonus. Allan exclaimed in amazement. While termed a bonus, it essentially represented damage compensation. With a 100 million prize, total compensation reached 400 million. Lisa nearly forgot the most crucial detail. Their institution had finally achieved third-grade status. Allan's triumph satisfied evaluation requirements. They now accessed multiple privileges. Most importantly for the champion, 4th-level dungeon access became available. Allan's achievements made this possible. Lisa expressed genuine appreciation. The champion suggested she could gradually recruit students. Circumstances appeared increasingly favorable. Rock, paper, scissors wouldn't be necessary. Midday had arrived. Allan inquired about the group's preferences. He would purchase whatever they desired. Excellent. Wealth and delectable meals awaited. Shopping time had commenced. The spear's cost had escalated to 400 million. though recently Elgininus's weapon cost merely 100 million. Allan couldn't understand pricing mechanisms or optimal purchase timing. If prices continued rising exponentially, the champion would face significant losses rather than savings. Poverty wasn't an acceptable outcome. Alternative weapon acquisition seemed prudent. The shop offered Aphrodite's belt and a Gipner replica. Allan considered Longus's spear the superior choice, but was purchase advisable? The merchandise appeared impressive, though photographs could be deceiving. Blind purchasing, despite attractive pricing, seemed unwise. He wondered why items worth tens of billions cost only 100 or 200 million. Even replicas might harbor hidden complications. Perhaps such appealing prices served as traps for careless students who would purchase at one rate, then face increased charges later. Curiously, why did vendors provide minimal product descriptions? This forced guesswork about advantages or disadvantages from brief summaries. Essentially, it resembled purchasing unseen merchandise with unclear value proposition. Financial loss was undesirable. Product verification might prove impossible since certainty only came post-purchase. Perhaps community reviews existed, various discussions among novices, student communities from ranker academies. Allan lacked credentials for posting or commenting. Yet viewing remained possible, and he discovered store purchase reviews. To assist fellow students, one user compiled comprehensive reviews of 100 items he'd experienced personally. He provided 10-point ratings while highlighting essential characteristics, perfect for his needs. First, the Aegis shield. Frankly, this was absolute garbage. Beyond blocking powerful attacks, the shield featured a jellyfish head. Due to this bizarre creature attachment, the shield possessed the remarkable ability to petrify targets through direct gaze. The problem, owners also risked petrification. No method existed for controlling this power. Overall rating, 2 out of 10. This reviewer appeared genuine, having actually purchased 100 items based on this extensive catalog. Next came Cabesus. Little could be said about its basic nature, simply a standard carrying bag, though appearances deceived. This container possessed spatial magic enabling significant size expansion. It also featured time-stopping magic and lightning magic. Its adamant composition provided exceptional durability. Generally, 100 out of 10. Purchase guaranteed satisfaction. Cabesus. The goddess Hera from Greek legends owned a similarly named bag, which she gifted to Perseus for slaying Medusa. Allan investigated Cabesus's pricing. Analysis revealed a 100 million cost. This seemed surprisingly reasonable. Given the price point, it offered considerable utility. During dungeon raids, he could immediately store materials and transport them. Beyond corpses, even unwieldy weapons could be accommodated. Though complete weight reduction wasn't possible, this remained disappointing. Wait, even partial weight reduction would prove invaluable. Allan could store everything in this container, carry heavy objects, and obtain upgrades. The champion decided on definite purchase. 3 days later, he admired his magnificent new spear. Its real-world appearance was stunning. Like Cabus, effectiveness required testing. Allan already sensed an extraordinary aura emanating from it. Unfortunately, his savings account was singing melancholy songs again. The champion hadn't realized Cabus would dramatically alter pricing upon purchase. Deception was clearly involved. Regardless, Allan had acquired his desired equipment. The primary concern was justifying the investment and eventual cost recovery. Despair wasn't warranted. Lisa inquired if he truly planned another raid. Wouldn't brief rest following the previous expedition be preferable? Allan replied that he felt completely fine. Moreover, he couldn't remain idle knowing additional income was necessary. Lisa was astonished that he'd already depleted his entire 400 million prize money. However, the spear's brilliant gleam clearly indicated the champion's expenditure. He'd made this purchase despite financial complaints. When Lisa discovered Allan's renewed financial recklessness, fury overcame her, though these remained his personal funds. They descended into a 4-star dungeon. The champion advised Lisa to maintain caution and proximity, as monsters could strike unexpectedly. Gargoyles inhabited this 4-star dungeon, meaning these creatures should possess maximum defensive capabilities. These monsters would perfectly test Ilgininus's spear. Initially, Allan would wield it without magical enhancement to assess base damage potential, regardless of level 4 gargoyle strength. Ilgininus's spear should inflict meaningful harm, with magical enhancement available if danger emerged. The gargoyle snarled menacingly. Allan executed a simple spear swing, bisecting the statue. He couldn't comprehend the occurrence. Allan simultaneously asked Lisa for clarification. Why seek answers when he'd performed the action himself? Lisa had assumed that following all his accomplishments, no further surprises could shock her. But this assumption proved incorrect. She couldn't understand how gargoyles could be sliced as effortlessly as soft tofu. Were they truly constructed from fragile materials nowadays? Allan noted modest collectible value. Lisa expressed surprise at his tiny container. Only 2 pieces could fit inside. Though Cabassus reduced weight by 70%, some heaviness persisted. Allan extracted a massive gargoyle from his bag, stating he'd utilize it at raid's conclusion. Lisa sought confirmation. Was the prize definitely 400 million units, not dollars? Obviously not dollars. She then questioned how Allan had acquired these items, specifically their source. The champion explained his purchase from a hunting shop encountered during casual browsing. Lisa's eyes brightened as she requested its location. Allan described the store's position in a shadowy alley near his residence, catering to academy students. Lisa urgently requested detailed directions. She also desired access, but Allan doubted her ability to locate it. During his final visit, the proprietor mentioned closing plans and travel intentions. Allan clearly displayed deceptive expressions. Embarrassment filled him, yet truth remained unspoken. They proceeded deeper. Excessive gargoyle numbers created danger. Lisa volunteered to handle them personally, but the champion intervened. Allan requested permission to manage them. He wanted experimental attempts. Longus's spear exceeded expectations significantly. Without magical enhancement, it had sliced gargoyles like tender tofu. He wondered what would occur if Allan applied his recently acquired magical knowledge. Tremendous power that extracted mountains from Earth would eliminate all obstacles in its trajectory. The spirit capable of revolutionizing existence would command all adversaries. This new power represented complete annihilation. The force was absolutely terrifying. Allan struck, leaving no gargoyle remnants. The ground itself split in 2. The sacred spear that allegedly pierced Jesus during crucifixion was Longinus's weapon. Despite the weapon's historical significance, Allan had expected mediocre performance and hoped for minimal effectiveness. After utilizing it, complete bewilderment resulted. Fortunate that alternative purchases weren't made. Allan's judgment proved valuable in some respects. He was equally satisfied with Cabas. Based on student reviews, additional weapon purchases for cost recovery seemed worthwhile. Increased purchases would enable cheaper future weapon acquisitions. This theory required testing. Following the raid, he urgently began studies. Maximum lecture absorption was necessary to optimize these remaining 25 days. Lisa nearly forgot to inform Allan of important news. Her sister Luna had written expressing strong desire to meet him. Perhaps he'd better understand her identity if Lisa mentioned she was a student of someone nicknamed the Devil. If this matched Allan's suspicions, they were discussing someone incomparable except to the Devil himself, and this terrifying individual who'd earned the title of Devil's successor. She knew many remarkable people, but why did Luna want to meet Allan? She probably sought information about the penultimate dungeon conquest that resonated throughout Korea, though he could refuse. Lisa wouldn't permit Luna to pressure him excessively and could easily decline. Wait, would she actually behave like a star sword? Lisa said no. Luna wasn't even close, so worry was unnecessary. If that was accurate, Allan had no objections. Lisa would contact her immediately. Once Luna provided scheduling details, she'd notify him promptly. Minutes later, Lisa messaged that Luna could visit and inquired about convenient timing. However, the guest had already arrived. She'd apparently planned to appear regardless of Allan's response. Actually, Luna had predicted his acceptance. The devil's student inquired about the boy her grandfather had praised extensively. Upon seeing Allan, she couldn't believe her eyes. This person couldn't possibly be a high school student. Luna approached quickly, demanding to know where he'd obtained this object. Before Allan could respond, she insisted even more urgently that he explain its source. He would gladly answer, but requested clarification about the referenced object. Luna told him to stop pretending ignorance. Lisa asked for calm. Allan genuinely didn't understand her meaning. Luna demanded release. She absolutely had to discover this item's origin. If he wouldn't cooperate willingly, force would be necessary. Lisa began calming her sister. These words further agitated Allan. Lisa apologized for Luna's inappropriate conduct. She didn't typically behave this way. She just becomes forceful like a tank when something interests her. Allan again questioned if this was truly the person Lisa had mentioned minutes earlier. If so, why did she appear so youthful? He'd heard she was well past 40. Lisa confirmed this accuracy. Luna simply applied appearance-altering magic, maintaining a young appearance. Through imprinting magic, Luna could constantly preserve her body's appearance based on youthful memories. While seeming effortless externally, mastering this magic had been challenging for her. She'd answered his question. Now Allan must answer hers. Where had he acquired this magical bag? Luna's eyes sparkled when he produced Caesis. She was delighted by such a miracle. So much space was available. Allan asked what else Lisa had revealed, but no, she'd shared nothing. Upon Luna's arrival, she'd immediately rushed inside. Lisa believed she was enchanted by the bag, though Allan saw nothing particularly enchanting about it. Luna began babbling about 4 simultaneously activated magics. Not just any magics, considering her extensive knowledge. She requested purchase and shouted she'd pay 1 billion. Allan was shocked. Wasn't this price excessive? Where would Luna obtain such funds? She declared the bag's value justified this price. Additionally, she'd pay in installments. Had Luna known Allan purchased the bag for only 300 million, or that the original cost less than 1 billion, she certainly wouldn't have made such an offer. The champion wasn't Mother Teresa to reveal truth, especially since she possessed wealth. Plus 1 billion was a sum that would resolve several lectures' worth of cabesis payments. However, Allan stated the bag wasn't for sale. Luna asked in shock what price he wanted. He placed the bag in her hands and told her to attempt practical use. Then she'd understand his reasoning. Upon Luna's contact, immediate electrocution occurred. As evident, only Allan could operate it. Product resale to non-academy students was strictly forbidden, since previous students designed it for future generations. Perhaps Luna would finally withdraw. She nearly wept. This meant the bag contained not 4, but 5 magical enchantments. Luna begged to know where Allan had purchased it. He fabricated a story about a store near his residence, though he couldn't remember the seller and the shop vanished after his purchase. Hearing this was disappointing but apparently not destined. Since this was the situation, Luna requested assistance with one small matter. Since she couldn't use it personally, he could participate in her plan. Luna assured him nothing illegal would occur, and payment would be guaranteed. Even after learning she couldn't buy or use the bag, she decided to seek Allan's help. If someone else merely touched the bag, protective magic would activate. But different rules applied when the owner provided assistance. Should Allan agree? Luna was staring at him intensely. If she paid well, he'd gladly help in return. Allan was quite busy, so he asked whether she wanted to begin immediately or later. Luna replied slightly later. She would provide advance notice of date and time, then they'd visit the laboratory together. It wouldn't require much time. She almost forgot her original purpose. Luna requested detailed information about that day's penultimate dungeon conquest. Allan explained that Nira had somehow entered the dungeon, but the magic deployed there couldn't detect him. Luna asked how he'd managed to defeat the monster. Allan replied that luck was involved, so to speak. Luck certainly, but something else assisted. Anyone would have suspected problems, since even professionals couldn't defeat Nura. He was only vulnerable to Allan's specific magic. Without Merlin's training, the outcome was frightening to imagine. Could the theory from his lecture apply to their world? Allan wanted to share one theory firmly embedded in his mind. As everyone knew, magic and aura directly depended on mana. In other words, he wanted to address how mana was utilized and its connection to their world. This sounded absurd, but Allan requested a hearing. Could dungeon deformation somehow connect to mana? Luna requested more details, not missing any specifics. Assuming magic and aura possessed distortion capabilities when using mana, Allan wondered if dungeon deformation related to these distortions. Merlin frequently mentioned in lectures that using various magics could even distort their world's space. Applying lecture knowledge to their world accordingly, one could assume deformation resulted from someone's will. Since deformation wasn't a natural phenomenon, this could only indicate external interference. Why had Allan raised such a foolish topic before this genius magician? What if she simply laughed at him? He asked her not to consider this nonsense seriously. Then Luna asked if Allan was also a mage. No, he was merely a novice monster hunter, aspiring to professional status someday. Luna then shouted, asking how he could formulate this theory. Perhaps he didn't want to reveal truth. Did he realize such theories couldn't be conceived without excellent magical command? But Allan hadn't originated it. Merlin had. Luna then asked if the champion had actually created this magical bag himself. Perhaps he'd decided to avoid unnecessary attention as a genius magician. So he chose to hide behind a novice hunter title. Allan looked at her confused. How had their conversation taken this direction? Luna asked with glowing eyes how he'd conceived this. Allan had simply used Merlin's knowledge as foundation, adding his own thoughts. He hadn't anticipated such strong reaction. She then posed the next question. This was expected. As stated in Transcendence Academy lectures, courses were created specifically for them and took knowledge and thinking beyond human limits. Regardless, Allan was an ordinary student aspiring to professional hunter status, who understood nothing about magical sciences. In this environment, he seemed like the instructor here. If knowledge was a commodity, what about charging for teaching people? This was worth considering. Allan had promised to lend Cabis, but in this case he shared, meaning sold, his knowledge. This was wisdom he'd acquired through personal effort, as opposed to equipment from stores. Why not apply it to another area? Though for this, Allan must not simply retell lecture material, but present it in his own interpretation, and teaching wasn't the easiest task. Most importantly, who would want to learn from a fellow student? Luna observed that Allan was completely unfamiliar with magical teaching concepts. Where was he with his 17.9% course progress? Nevertheless, what he'd shared initially, she never expected such insights from him. She'd have to study this. Luna said business was concluded, time to know when she'd later invite him to the research center. The girl departed hastily, an unusual personality different from the media-dictated image. Luna heard this frequently. Sometimes Lisa even doubted she was the next devil. Considering the Star Sword, Kalia, and now the Devil's Disciple, meeting such people even once in a lifetime was nearly impossible, and Allan had already encountered 3. At this rate, the Great Voice would visit him too. The champion continued practicing, but complained progress was too slow. Thanks to efficiency improvements through Cabis's assistance, Allan began quickly managing individual course assignments, but time was too limited for completion within the allocated period. He wished to complete at least one course before the free pass expired. All that remained was either earning money for the pass or intensively raising course progress. Allan wanted to ask Lisa something, but she was panicking. She couldn't manage teaching new students alone. She needed to hire a professor but couldn't invite just anyone. And what would the salary be? Would Lisa really have to participate in raids again? Allan distracted her from these thoughts. He asked what was troubling her that she hadn't even heard him. Honestly, she'd planned to recruit new students, but complications arose, so uncertainty remained, and she was struggling. Lisa then asked what Allan wanted. Basically, he wanted to know if any competition like the previous two would occur in the near future, for example, within the next 20 days. Lisa opened the schedule, but no competitions existed. However, a practice examination would become available next month. As the name suggested, it wasn't a real exam, but preparatory. Since professional hunter examinations occurred only annually, failure meant waiting until the following year. This created enormous examination pressure. Therefore, educational institutions introduced mock exams for advanced student preparation. Among them, the top three in South Korea were notable. Hunter Mill was Kon. Their mock exams were comprehensive and allowed all student participation. Therefore, grades earned were believed close to professional hunter examination scores. Allan was certain all students surpassing Sean would participate and provide substantial grant funding. The money issue and course progress problem would be resolved simultaneously. But why next month? That was when the free pass period concluded. What could be done? It was worth attempting first. Allan listened to Karan's lecture about witchcraft failures and the need for intuition during such moments. The champion had never considered this. Transcendence were simply amazing, as Chiron knew. The Transcendence practice exam date was approaching. His sole advice was not to fixate on grades. After all, this was merely a preliminary examination. Allan didn't know Transcendence also had preliminary testing. So transcendental examinations truly existed, even licenses. Standards existed here, and someone evaluated performance. Considering that advertisement, an interview with a 5th-rank Celestial and 9th-rank Swordmaster, Allan had initially thought it was someone's joke, but apparently it wasn't. Moving forward, what purpose did taking the Transcendent Practice exam serve? The champion hadn't reached that level yet. Increasing course progress would be beneficial, so let's examine Shang Yu for now. The professor instructed students to register for examinations if they chose to do so. Now they could freely wield enormous power. Naturally, this was false. Shang Yu could repeat this 100 times, but they still wouldn't grasp it, so they should record it. They would experience firsthand their worthlessness. Allan didn't understand the situation. He'd assumed all lectures were recordings. Additionally, Chiron and Xiang Yu both mentioned examinations in videos the champion would have watched eventually. Perhaps Shakyamuni and Merlin as well. Allan accessed their lectures. Both Buddha and Merlin discussed the approaching training examination. These conversations appeared everywhere regardless of Allan's selections. Well, plenty of oddities existed in the Transcendence Academy. Was this examination really so important? The champion decided to check community opinions. The user had heard about transcendent difficulties but couldn't imagine the severity until experiencing it personally. It was the 10th year, but he still didn't know which direction to take. Embarrassingly, he hadn't reached examination level. Similar situation. As expected, everyone advised leveling up first. User Ruler of the Forest recommended attempting it. Since you're a beginner, grades shouldn't be mentioned, but this would significantly help increase course progress. Allan then considered whether the risk was worthwhile. In the morning, he arrived at the academy and opened a Transcendence Academy tab. Student capability calculation began and optimal pricing was being established. First participation was free. Wasting a free opportunity would be regrettable. Allan decided he could still earn money, so he quickly applied for participation. Task difficulty adjusted to transcendental examination standards. 7 topics existed in total. The first topic was combat power. One needed to find correct answers to a 15-stage task. Allan was shocked the examination was beginning immediately. How was it even conducted? It stated there were only 15 stages. Considering Transcendence level, even the first should expect a 5 or 6-star monster, starting with 5-star difficulty and increasing by stars per stage. By stage 15, Allan would face a 20-star monster. Suddenly, lights activated and something emerged from the phone. The champion assumed fighting stance. The first stage monster would appear now. It was growing larger continuously. It grew without stopping. Allan was shocked when he saw the dragon before him. Fafnir must be destroyed within 30 minutes. The dragon's body glowed with blue flame. Fafnir then released dragon breath directly at Allan. Within 2 seconds, the champion failed the stage. He was crushed. He collapsed in despair. This was madness. How could one catch a dragon? This was only the first stage. A dragon monster whose combat power compared not to the 10th stage but the first stage. Not just any dragon, but destruction dragon Fafnir. If Fafnir occupied the first stage, would they really order him to fight God at the 15th? Would Transcendence emerge victorious against gods? Probably not. Or could they become such themselves? Exactly. Demigods also existed. Hercules, Zeus, Buddha, for example. Allan sat down and contemplated his options. He'd expected building collapse, but it remained whole and undamaged. So examination monsters affected nothing except the champion. This was good. At least one thing brought happiness. After the first attempt, Allan had 10 more chances remaining. Though it seemed even after these 10 attempts, nothing would change. But he stood up to determine who would win, he or Fafnir. Ultimately, Allan failed the first stage 4 more times. He couldn't win. He lost completely. He fell to the ground again and screamed that he couldn't. Allan was losing his mind. He was far from professional hunter status. What other transcendental being? Something needed to be done to increase the course's progress. But he'd be finished before he could move, so raising it was pointless. But it was too late to refuse or change to something else. Suddenly, a message arrived. Allan was offered to listen to an explanatory lecture on the relevant issue. However, if he agreed, points would be deducted from his grade. Would they really tell him how to win? He also offered 3 explanatory lectures. Great sage, equal to heaven, Sun Wukong. Perhaps the lecture would teach something. Allan decided to include it. The first stage of the training exam was Destruction Dragon Fafnir. This was an attentiveness task which caused some difficulties, but digging deeper, everything was much simpler. Perhaps many students might be confused by his first instruction, breathing. This was Fafnir's beginning and end. He had nothing else. Allan hadn't seen Sun Wukong for a long time, though the champion had laughed at him at their first meeting, mistaking him for a fierce cosplayer. Let's continue the lecture. In short, you'll avoid breathing and the deal is in your pocket. Sun Wukong said to watch carefully. Fafnir appeared before him. The professor said not to even consider cutting off breathing. The student was great if he could, but this wasn't necessary. You just had to dodge. Once breath was released, Fafnir would be unable to use it for a period. Then one could assume it was an ordinary lizard. And what did this mean? This meant you could simply beat him up. Sun Wukong demonstrated the staff of heaven, moon, and stars, first form. The meteorite fell. No trace of Fafnir remained. It was all so simple. Allan asked himself what the professor meant. Though the task tested students' ability to understand situations, it was only the first stage. The more difficult, the easier. Allan dropped out. Was that really an explanatory lecture? Perhaps the champion didn't quite understand the word explanation's meaning. Or do transcendents have their own understanding of this word? Or maybe it was just Allan being strange. Damn. Were the remaining lectures really going to be like this? The next lecture was called Yard Lightning Breath. Allan was shocked. This was the end. How would he do it again? The champion was desperate. He didn't know what to do. And he'd also spent his precious free coupons. It would be shameful to retreat now. The next lecture was from Siegfried. He would analyze Fafnir's characteristics. Siegfried as a champion appears in Northern European mythology. the Ring of the Nibelungs. He wielded the famous sword, Balmung, and was the strongest dragon slayer. The dragon that helped him gain the Slayer title was none other than Destruction Dragon Fafnir. The lecture title spoke for itself. No matter how you viewed it, Siegfried knew more about Fafnir than anyone else. If this turned out strange, Allan would simply flee. So, as we know, the key to Fafnir is the breath. This leads to the main question. Will I be able to dodge the breath or not? Accordingly, students must be able to dodge the flames. The goal is achieved the end. And Siegfried, too. However, the guys are watching the lecture precisely because it isn't that simple. For this, he will analyze Fafnir's characteristics and show the second way to achieve the goal. First, Fafnir breathes out where he is summoned. If you summon him and quickly jump away, the breath will rush in that direction. This is a pure trick, but knowing this, you will easily be able to dodge the breath. Still, there will be students who will find it difficult to avoid. Therefore, now, just for such students, Siegfried will tell the second method. He said to listen carefully and prepare a gold bar. Allan went to the store on purpose, but still doubted that it would really work. Siegfried said that in truth, this rascal became a dragon because of the gold that clouded his vision. Fafnir is extremely greedy. It doesn't have to be an ingot. Even something resembling gold will do. You need to summon Fafnir and immediately throw gold under his nose. Then the bastard won't start using his breath right away. Why? Because gold can melt, you ask. Isn't this solved with skills? What's the difference, whether the students use a trick or their own skills? The main thing is to find the right solution. In any case, that concludes everything Siegfried wished to communicate. Should you be curious about methods for conquering additional dragons, attend his educational sessions on dragon-slaying swordplay. Allan exhaled deeply. Regardless of approach, starting funds demand financial commitment. Without hesitation, he called forth Fafnir. At that precise instant, he hurled the metal bar beneath the creature's snout. The dragon's gaze sparkled with interest, and it instantly pursued the golden object. Allan succeeded in evading the dragon's fiery exhalation. However, upon Fafnir's discovery that it was merely gold plating, the beast struck the earth with such tremendous force using its tail that the warrior was launched skyward. Allan unsuccessful in the opening trial once more. He created such commotion yet endured barely more than 60 seconds. During the hero's attempt to regain composure, a notification appeared on his mobile device. Chiron's educational progress advanced by 3%. Allan even contemplated perhaps crafting golden protective gear for himself. 4 opportunities remained, so the warrior wasted no time attempting to confront Fafnir. Nevertheless, even evasive maneuvers proved challenging. Allan remained silent regarding any possibility of landing attacks. The moment for dodging has passed. Under those circumstances, he retrieved a golden ingot from his satchel and launched it. Fafnir charged recklessly while swinging its tail. Allan narrowly survived, nearly perishing. The dragon grew enraged once again upon discovering this was simply gilding. Allan then proceeded to bombard Fafnir with a shower of ingots. Finally, he awaited the perfect opportunity and struck with the strength that relocates peaks. The unmatched spiritual energy that encompasses existence. Allan channeled his entire might into the lance to penetrate the dragon. Before he could celebrate, he realized he hadn't inflicted even minor damage. Fafnir hurled Allan from its spine, and he failed the opening trial again. The warrior believed he had secured the dragon. Though truly agonizing, the lecture advancement justifies the suffering. Logically, Xiang Yu's course development increased following the assault. Should this pattern continue, Allan will complete no fewer than 1 course by the trial period's conclusion. With dedication, perhaps 2. 3 chances remain. Excellent. Maintaining this determination, he will issue another challenge. Lisa observed that Allan hadn't participated in dungeon expeditions recently. He responded that time was completely unavailable. Chose to concentrate on solo training temporarily. Lisa appears perplexed. Indeed, Discussing time scarcity while gazing at one's phone throughout the day seems peculiar. Allan received 4.2 points out of 100 for martial discipline, failing the practice examination with such abysmal marks in the initial subject. The issue lies in courses advancing more slowly than the warrior anticipated. Actual combat remains the sole method for rapidly gaining course comprehension. When Allan analyzes all studied material and successfully implements it practically, progress increases. The Transcendence practice examination occurs every 3 days. Attending lectures will facilitate advancement, an excellent opportunity to complete all courses. 3 days later, Allan progressed to the second subject, fundamental endurance. The assignment materialized, and a magical orb appeared in his palm, resembling the one that grants desires. However, Allan remained unaware of events occurring behind him. Within the designated time frame, you must flee from the dragon Kanori, preventing it from obtaining the wish-fulfilling pearl. Connie possesses immunity against damage from all attacks. Allan rotated, and the dragon roared. Was this fundamental stamina? At this juncture, the hero failed the opening stage, yet Chiron and Zhang Yu's course progress increased substantially. The third subject involves adaptability. The student's 5 senses will be blocked. The Sphinx must be eliminated or survivors must endure. The massive statue mumbled something. Allan believed it might have been the word human. Consequently, he failed the stage but enhanced his progress again. The fourth subject concerns mana. You must restrain Pulgasari's hunger within the allotted duration. Should you fail to satisfy Pulgasari with sufficient mana, it will regard you as its meal. Allan began feeding the creature, but it continued consuming endlessly. To hell with this, he simply began fleeing. The fifth subject is mental fortitude. You must endure for the designated time while listening to the siren's melody. Allan was surprised because the sound was quite enjoyable to hear. Perhaps this stems entirely from Shakyamuni's ataraxia influence. Thus, the hero passed the first level for the initial time. He determined he would reach 15 shortly. The second stage requires enduring for the allotted time, listening to the requiem from the realm of death. His ears began bleeding, and that concluded the fifth subject. Examining his scores, Allan declared himself a disgrace. Yet still, should this continue, he will manage to finish 2 courses. 2 subjects remain for selection. Wow, I'm curious about their contents. Even among those initial 10 answer choices when Allan selected rank 9, no subjects for selection were mentioned. Perhaps they'll allow him to choose on examination day. Oh well, we'll discover when the time arrives. Allan thought he could simply wait, but impatience consumed him. Lisa noticed and inquired about the problem. He hasn't appeared himself for several days. The hero nervously stated nothing had occurred and she shouldn't worry. This situation could drive one insane. 3 days have passed with no notifications. Only 5 days of free access remain. Slightly more pressure and Allan would complete the course. He considered quickly participating in a dungeon raid. This approach seems better than sitting and awaiting something incomprehensible. He repeatedly told himself it wasn't too late. He simply needed to apply additional effort. Suddenly, the phone vibrated and the mentor emerged. Damn, that startled me. The guide inquired about Allan's activities during this period. He was somewhat delayed. As you observe, the hero was living well. Allan irritably asked what the mentor had been doing, appearing only now. Lisa inquired again. The hero answered embarrassedly that he hadn't said anything. It must have been due to exhaustion. Allan seized the phone and hurried to the street. So he asked what had delayed the mentor so long. He began seeking excuses that Allan was managing perfectly without him. The hero requested the truth. In reality, the mentor intended to check Allan's profile and return immediately, but he was deeply troubled. The hero asked for clarification, and the mentor mumbled something about level. The mentor wished he could offer advice, but it wouldn't benefit Allan much at his current level, so he decided it would be optimal for him to focus on the 2 courses he recommended. The trial period is brief, and consultations will only prove useful if Allan elevates his level. Damn, that sounds convincing. The hero can't even express anger. But nonetheless, Mentor should have provided warning. For this, he sincerely apologizes. Allan stated that he had been studying diligently throughout this time, examining everything independently. Then Mentor picked up the phone and offered to inspect. However, his smile gradually disappeared as soon as he looked inside. The Mentor began asking what was happening. Was there an error? Allan asked if any problems existed. The Mentor said nothing special was present, but for some reason 4 courses were displayed here, and something unusual with their progress. That's correct, Allan is auditing 4 courses. The Mentor replied this couldn't be and asked for repetition. And then the hero confirmed that the screen information was accurate, which shocked the Mentor. Allan's level was terribly low. Is achieving such progress in merely 3 months possible? Even if these are just introductory courses, they usually require 3 or 4 times longer. Allan replied that the practice examination had helped him progress greatly. The Mentor was surprised that the hero was taking it currently too. Yes, his presence was indeed unnecessary. By the way, since they were discussing leveling up, Allan has a question about the examination. He asked how to select electives. As indicated, the student chooses the desired subject to pass, but he was surprised that the examination was in progress, and Allan claims not to have selected. And it states here that he lacks the Isla of the Transcendence Academy. The Mentor doesn't understand how this is possible, but the hero simply missed its creation during registration. The assistant thought Allan had confused something, but he showed evidence on his phone. The Mentor is extremely surprised. This has never occurred before. It appears he will need to contact the director. He'll be absent for a while, and Allan should concentrate on the examination for now. Will he disappear again? Number. Mentor promised he would submit a request and return immediately. Now he will resolve the problem with selectable subjects. He clicked on the screen and said that now you can choose calmly. We'll return before the free pass expires. Damn. Allan wanted to ask Mentor several more questions, but he simply departed. Well, since he said he'd return before the free pass expires, they'll meet again very soon. Finally, Xiang Yu's course progress reached 100%. Upon course completion, Allan will fully master the spear, whose power will relocate mountains. He decided to test and waved the weapon. The hero was pleasantly surprised. The enormous power simply overflowed the spear. A notification arrived. Allan was offered to listen to an epilogue lecture from Xiang Yu. The Supreme Ruler never thought the day would come when the hero would finish the course. He thought he would never witness it. Xiang Yu is confident that everyone who has completed the course has undergone great transformations. Perhaps they can now freely utilize unlimited power. But he hopes that none of the students became too proud simply because of such a trifle. The power to relocate mountains is the foundation of foundational learning. The students just progressed from being regular trash to being recyclable. But that doesn't change the truth that they remain trash. Still, congratulations on this achievement. Now they need to learn and refine the spear technique that suits them and dedicate themselves to the path of becoming true transcendence. This path will be extremely treacherous. But we must remember that in transcendence there is no single correct answer, and therefore you need to believe that you have made the right decision and confidently follow this path. Speed is not important here at all. Allan returned to the academy. Lisa was waiting for him. She was discussing the hunter's training examination. Applications are being accepted starting today and will last for a week. Great. The hero was just about to ask. Lisa will complete the application right now. Allan failed the transcendental training examination. His grades are so poor you could weep. But these are transcendence. Hunters can be different. Shu's course helped gain incredible power. Besides, Allan possesses the Holy Spear now. Lisa said the application is complete. The examination will start in 10 days. But the hero was contemplating who would be the victor if they clashed in a duel now. Although there was no point. It won't even affect progress. By the way, Allan asked how the search for students is progressing. Well, to be honest, this question worries Lisa very much. It is unknown how Grandpa will behave with the new student. Somehow, Allan got away with it. Well, yeah. When a new student appears, the Star Sword will definitely appear to beat him up. Okay, Lisa will somehow reach an agreement with Grandpa, but she is most concerned about which professor to invite. Allan wondered if she wasn't the one teaching. Lisa usually taught, but she couldn't teach everything. Each student is an individual. You can't teach them using personal methods. And Allan believed that simply teaching is enough. That's why she needs to have a professor in each area. Hiring just anyone is not so great, but there is no money for famous professors. Allan asked what the annual salary of famous professors is. For famous ones, it is hundreds of millions a month, and in the case of those at the top, around several billion. Allan's eyes lit up at such sums. So it's not just that they leave professional hunters to open their own schools or teach. Allan said that if Lisa needed his help, she could always turn to him. 3 days have passed. The hero looks at his worthless scores. Anyone who sees them will decide that the maximum score is 100. Well, at least Allan finished Shang Yu's course. It's a shame about Chiron's course, but there's still time left for the free pass. Maybe he'll make it. Mentor suddenly returned. This time the hero wasn't surprised. He looked displeased. A pink glow appeared, and Mentor himself said that he would return before the end of the free pass. Allan assumed that he would appear when the hero completed at least one course. The Mentor is shocked that the hero completed the course. He doesn't even have anything to say. So Allan asked if he had managed to find out anything. That's right, it completely slipped my mind. The Mentor shouted that they seemed to be in big trouble. He decided to check Allan's personal information before reporting to the director that he did not have an ID. But he found nothing. The hero did not understand anything. There is no information about Mr. Allan Jefferson in the Academy of Transcendence. Everything is as the Mentor said. There is no such person on the list of those admitted to the Academy. Wait, so Allan isn't a student at the Academy? But how could he listen to all the lectures then? That can't be. This is what Mentor is talking about. The Academy strictly controls membership. If you are not a student, you will not be able to listen to lectures, and they wouldn't mess with him. Allan asked if the director had said anything. Mentor had reported everything to him personally. The director also doesn't understand how this happened. It's easy to assume that it's someone very impressive. And if even such a person does not understand what is going on, then no one will be able to. Allan assumed that this was a system error. But no, that doesn't happen in the Academy unless you change your karma. But karma is constant, no matter what happens. The director said that there are traces of someone else's interference, but who he is and how he pulled it off is still unclear. Then Allan asked what would happen to him. Would he be forced to leave the Academy? The Mentor said, "Of course not." Somehow there was a misunderstanding. The problem was on their end. Ironically, Allan had nothing to do with it. So, when Mentor spoke about the problem, he meant that they were at the Academy and the hero would not be expelled. That's good. This was clearly done intentionally and has its own purposes. But by whom and why Allan? There is nothing special about him. He is a simple worker who dreams of becoming a hunter. The Mentor assured that this will not affect Allan in any way now, and until they find the original source, it will be difficult to create an ID for him. Well, it didn't bother him much, so it's okay. Well, let's get to the point then. There are 2 days left in the free pass period. Allan asks for advice on what to do next. First of all, the Mentor will say a few words about the curriculum of their academy. In general, it can be divided into 4 stages: introductory, beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Allan has now completed the introductory stage. He thought that when he passed the advanced stage, he would become a transcendent, but by no means. After the advanced stage, he still has a lot to overcome. There, Allan will no longer need the Mentor's advice, because everyone who has passed it is already at a certain level. According to the first students, The stage of becoming a transcendent is many times more difficult than the curriculum from introductory to advanced stage. Allan still has a long way to go. Anyway, now he has to go to the initial level. First of all, he will need to buy the free pass again. And once the hero buys it, he will have to take an individual course. The hero was offered 2 courses: Divine Power from Hercules and Air Walking from Zhang Xianfeng. The mentor said these 2 courses would be useful. Allan asked if they taught mana concentration techniques or spear handling. That's part of the intermediate level curriculum. Of course, the hero can learn them, but the mentor personally recommends choosing them at the middle stage. If you master the basics at the introductory and initial stages, everything will go like clockwork. Allan was confident that mentor had a reason for insisting on this, so he agreed. The calculation of the cost of the courses began for $2 million and for the other $2.5 million. Considering the cost of a free pass, Allan will have to fork out a lot of money. That's why mentor says to diligently accumulate karma. By the way, the hero asked what karma is. For the academy, it is a cause, and for the students, it is a consequence that can be influenced. In a word, a commitment to each other. Allan then asked what the academy received as a result of this commitment. The mentor replied that their only role was to help students become transcendent, and for what reason? The mentor frowned and said that at the moment, this was the most he could allow Allan to interfere with. Accordingly, this is the maximum he can tell. Therefore, the hero must reach greater heights, and then he himself will understand what the mentor's words meant. Until then, he will actively support Allan. The hero wanted to ask something else. For example, are there other students besides him? The mentor replied that of course Allan could tell just by looking at the community, but the hero must be asking if they are in the same dimension as him. The answer will be ambiguous. That's all the mentor can say. Among all the dimensions using their academy, in the place with the largest number of transcendental disciples, there are 4 people. The 3 largest hunter-mice in Korea are Hunter Mill Isle and Gaon. Each has a different specialization. Based on this, people usually say the following: if you want to learn magic, this is Il. If you want to learn how to handle a weapon, it's Gan. If you don't know anything, go to Hunter Mill. The lack of any special features also means that there are no cons. Since it is one of the top 3 mice in Korea, then we can fully assume what Hunter Mill is like. So, the day has come for the Hunter Mill Academy's professional hunter training course. It's going to get very crowded here soon. Better hurry. Allan has a completely different feeling than the competition. Well, yes, compared to some competition, both the scope of the training exam and the money invested in it are on a completely different level. The participant with the best grades will receive a scholarship of 1 billion won. The new free pass is worth 500 million. Those 30 million carefully saved from raiding dungeons are just a drop in the ocean. There are also individual courses, which the mentor advised, but a free pass is the most pressing issue. To collect such a tidy sum, there was only one thing left to do: take first place. The manager checked and let Allan and Lisa through. Everyone started pushing. What a fuss. The competitions are nothing compared to that. After all, this is a training exam from Hunter Mill. It's good that you came earlier. Then Lisa will go. She told Allan to watch the condition and wished him luck. The hero walked into the room with the participants when he suddenly heard screams. Someone was cutting in line and they were trying to put him in his place.